Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Was Captured by the Sand Girls Heart Part 2. And if you enjoyed this fanfic then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfics like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. This was something she never foresaw doing at this time. Well, she never tried to predict it, but that wasn't the issue. She was burned out. She expected to be fed, maybe listening to the radio, or reading a book. At the very least, in bed. Instead, she was sore all over from her earlier exhaustion, tired, hungry, and above all, desperate enough to make a terrible mistake. All in all, to correct an even worse one. I must be out of my mind. She reasoned, but why am I happy about it? She was at the center of the village, and sitting on a bench that was located on the outside of the entrance to what seemed to be a playground area for the civilian-looking school. She reasoned here to be an alright location for what she had intended, for this the same location that Naruto had earlier sat, and they had what one could mildly call a disagreement. She mentally brought together all of her energies and prayed, "Kami, please let this work so I can find him and apologize." She whispered to herself, "But if that's too much to ask for, at least let me live after I try this. Don't want to die of chakra exhaustion." She felt her inbred talent give off a pulse, albeit a weak one. For a minute, she saw everything in black, white, and blue. Each person had their own unique chakra coil formation and level capacity. In that minute of information, she sifted through it, searching for the presence of a Jinchuriki. She knew what Naruto's was like, so she wasn't at a lack of how to differentiate him from all others. She felt the civilians, she felt a ninja, and she basically felt everything. Until she met upon a bright blue haze all by itself, with the same aura of which Naruto himself had. There was a large amount of some kind of multicolored chakra within that haze, but she ignored it. From all accounts, that was completely weird and new to her. And so was Naruto. Matsuri heaved herself up from the bench, and repressed the urge and need to collapse back into it. She was now extremely weary, and her pack was not making things any easier. Her inky irises became hidden by her eyelids as they drooped. Exhaustion was taking its toll on her, and she using her sensory abilities usually left her sluggish when she was at her peak ability. Now, she worried that she was nearer dead than alive. She started to lean backwards as she swayed, but instead of giving in, she leaned forward as her eyes opened, and put her right foot forward. Then another, then another, then another. He didn't live too far from here, but at her current speed, condition and all other factors, he might as well have lived in Iron Country. But she had to try regardless. Equals X equals X equals. Another time, another instance, another battle, another victory. It's pointless. One day, you'll fail. I might as well keep postponing it then. Besides, living is death postponed. I hate to agree with you, you pathetic flesh sack of meat and bones, but you are correct. I was thinking, piss off. Naruto sighed as he eyed the seal holding back the Kyuubi in its cage. It's not that I don't like you. I'm pretty neutral right now, you know. I don't care. The fox growled as it sat on its haunches and glared with its slitted, bloodshot eyes. And you're essentially concentrated hate, correct? Quote, comma, quote. Silence means that you don't object. The Uzu Namikaze figured. The teen then stroked his chin as he backed away a little from the cage. So since you're hate, it means that you're hated by everything. You hate everything, and all that crap. Does that also include that you hate all of that about hate too? Don't be a smartass. I have to meditate to keep my emotions in check. I meditate to be neutral. I meditate to stay in control. You think you have control. Control is an illusion. I know. But pertaining to what happened recently, how the hell did you get that control over me? Naruto frowned. With my controlled emotions, it should be nigh impossible for me to get a rise to be influenced by you. I don't love, I don't hate. As per my requirements to have the title of being a sage, impartial to an emotion unlike my own teacher, I have sacrificed hating the village, to cease my infatuation with Sakura. What happened? If it were only two emotions, the monstrous Kitsune trailed off. If he cited the better of it and decided to let things play out, he would be better off that way. In just one day, Naruto had lost an incredible amount of control. How he despised that word. The Senju with good release had him under control. The Uchiha had him under control. The father of the brat in front of him had him under control. It was full time he retook the offensive. And that would be accomplished by remaining passive. And let this shit pile in front of him think he had control. Perhaps it was an isolated incident. The Kyuubi lied smoothly. With a sudden show of effort, it made a fist and struck the cave just behind the sealed area, and it failed to even budge. It's still solid. For now, anyway. Maybe we can still be acquaintances. We can't be friends due to the safe requirements, but nothing said I can't just say, hey, from time to time, huh? Naruto said with a long and lengthy sigh. Never, came the dry and simple reply. With a small wave of resignation, Naruto left the mindscape, and the Kyuubi by himself in his jail. Naruto came to, and found his entire world black. His eyes rolled around under his eyelids before they fluttered open, and he found himself in his apartment on his bed. Bouncing on the springs a bit, he leaned off the side from his lotus-style position and stood up next to the bed. "Ah well, I guess that's just how it goes," he remarked to himself with a groan. He had yet to change his clothes, get some food in his belly, and run a bath. What's first? I suppose get a bath, then I'll change into some better clothes, and during all of that, some water will have boiled full, he groaned at this. Ah, not tonight, I'm not going Spartan with my food. I'll just unseal something. He went to the bathroom, and flinched. The bathroom was a mess. How could he have forgotten that? He questioned himself. He opened the window to the outside, and found himself staring at a brick wall. What the hell? This hit up a building just like that. Just 1 foot away from my window. Shaking it off, he plugged up the tub and turned the tap. The rusty knob in his hands could barely give, and when it did at last, a deluge of brown water rusty came from the pipe, but soon ceased. Now, he had a quarter-way full tub of rather questionable water, a damnable bathroom and still no shower. To hell with this, I'll just use a water jutsu. He pulled the plug and watched the water swirl away in the tub. However, that soon came to a halt as the water over the drain bubbled, then stopped allowing the water to pass away. Cammy damn it, this tub is utter shit. He cursed to himself. He momentarily allowed his emotions to ebb away, and glanced at the toilet. Deciding to not chance to flush that to see what would happen, he backed out of the room and closed the door behind him. Things must have gotten really worse in the time I left. He muttered, but that bad, what am I going to do? Hardly was the question asked properly to himself was when he heard what sounded like a dragging noise outside the room. It wasn't a pattern, that much was sure. But it sounded faint, and seemed to get louder and louder as it became clear that it was inching to his door. He released a kunai from its secret catch inside his right sleeve, and it fell into his open palm in a reverse grip. What the hell is that? He listened very carefully, and soon, the noise stopped right behind the door. Tensing himself for likely combat, he held up the kunai in his right hand, and a half-rammed handsaw in the left. Knock, knock, knock. He raised an eyebrow. If this was indeed an attack, it was a horrible attempt if they were actually warning him. If it was a surprise, or a prank, it was in poor taste. He didn't answer. Naruto, I know you're in there. The person outside said lowly. His eyes widened, before he frowned. What do you want, Matsuri? He abandoned his stance, but did no more than that, except to place the kunai back in its place. I wanna say I'm sorry. The Uzumaki felt the need to laugh. Sorry for what? For trying, but miserably failing to beat the crap out of me. He heard her chuckle, before she stopped. Sorry for that too. I was just here to say sorry for making you out to be some kind of a perv. It's fine for guys to be a little pervy, I guess. The blonde shook his head, before he sat at the door, and leaned back against it. Little did he know, was that she was doing the exact same thing on the other side with her pack beside her. So, quote, Naruto was about to say his one-worded question again when she finally answered. I'm not looking for favors. I don't deserve it. You've been taking care of me when we didn't even know one another, and I tried to get physical with you every other hour. Your point is, I'm asking you to call a hospital. I essentially crawled here on my hands and knees after suffering chakra exhaustion, and I think I've got some ulcers in my jaw. She said the last with a weak chuckle. He thought a moment, trying to figure out something. How'd you find me? Sensed for you. He face-palmed himself. He made a mental note to do up some seals that could block sensory ability. Of course, at least it wasn't in an attempt to knock my block off, or something. He heard her sigh. Yeah, they were like that for 5 more minutes. Did you call for a nurse, or medic min or something? My body hurts. He groaned before getting up and opened the door. As he did and opened it towards him, she fell forward inside his well with a scream of pain. Now you're forgiven, Naruto remarked with a smile. Just help me up. He yanked her up by an uplifted arm, and made her stand upright. There you go. And she fell forward and headbutted him with her forehead on his nose. Yikes, what the? My body's just about given up. Carry me please. He groaned. Where? Sofa's fine. He obliged her, and hefted her weight beside him with her arm over and around the back of his neck. He made her to lie down on it, and she sighed. Yeah, lumpy. Better than the ground, I guess. He eyed her form, and noticed that in addition to breathing heavily, her knees were practically mauled and she appeared as if she had just run a marathon. Several of them, in fact. Back to back. You were already exhausted, and you knew that your sensory takes the wind out of your sails, and you did it anyway just to find me and apologize. He said in marvel. Yeah, thank Cammy I'm alive, girl. He fist bumped her shoulder. That was admirable. I also couldn't find a place to stay. She said flatly. His sweat dropped heavily. Oh, but was it your? Actually, I had my doubts, but some ninja named Aruka talked to me. I just had to apologize. You met Aruka. He's like a big brother of mine. That's so. She lifted an eyebrow with her response. Her eyes flickered around the room. Wow, your sensei and the Hokage were right. You do live in a dump. It's what was afforded to me. If your dad was who you say he was, couldn't they give you somewhere better to live? Naruto's mind backtracked to his earlier mishap with the Kyuubi's influence. How the Sandaime must have known. If he knew that he had the Kyuubi sealed in him from day one, his status of being the Nandaime's son was also known to him. All of a sudden, his relationship with the deceased old man seemed fake, for lack of a better word. They should have. Naruto growled. He checked himself for his anger, and felt it recede. But with the way things are right now, we're leaving. Leaving, yeah, came his curt reply. He furled his cloak closer to him and tired to alleviate the mood in a posh voice for a joke. Get your coat, here, we're leaving. In hindsight, he supposed it wasn't the best thing he could have said. But damn it all if it didn't make him and her blush a little. Still can't really move. He sighed and quickly created a shadow clone, which he ordered to get her packed. I'll carry you. Besides, you don't know the way, anyway. You're such a gentleman. Are you sure this isn't an effort to cop a feeling? She teased. Don't push your luck. Equals X equals X equals. He adjusted her weight behind him, while her arms were latched around his shoulders and neck. She was in a piggyback, and his shadow clone was basically carrying her stuff in the same fashion. Ready. She gripped a bit tighter. Ready. She reaffirmed with a nod. Without further ado, the cage Bunshin slammed the door with finality, and they both left the apartment building. All three watched the small blood streaks on the ground, indicating where and how she crawled. "You're really tenacious," her carrier remarked. "Arigato. I don't give up," she replied proudly. She took that moment to appreciate the feel of the gauze on her freshly clean knees and hoped that she could just let herself fall in the bed soon. With a laugh, he nodded. They leapt up to the rooftops, and made for the eastern end of the village, where the compound area was located. They soon had to abandon the roofs, but didn't matter, as the streets in this area weren't as populated. Matsuri looked up and admired the night sky. It was full of stars, and the moon lent the land an otherworldly glow. She smiled and thanked Kami for the graces so far, and counted herself lucky for ever finding a guy like Naruto. Her grip didn't falter in the least, and his muscle definition was plain to her. Wow. In the meantime, his face was fully crimson, but she couldn't see it from being behind him. Her breasts were pressing into his back, and he'd be lying if he said he didn't enjoy the feeling. He tried to focus on what he was doing, and was moderately successful as he recalled Jiraiya's directions to him from so long ago. He mentally hoped that they were accurate. Behind the Hyuga compound, right now, they were running along the front wall of the compound. It was a massive one, but from his teacher's opinions, the Namikaze property was just as large, if not just a wee bit smaller. Finally coming to the end of the wall, he had to strafe right to avoid someone in his way. "What the? Coming through, lady," Naruto fumed. Hinata. He didn't let up in his speed, but later, he would swear vehemently that time slowed down as everyone was observing everyone. Hinata stared at Naruto, his clone, Matsuri on his back, and the fact that the clone had a backpack of traveling things and such. Naruto saw Hinata's face flash from surprise to something unfamiliar, and Matsuri saw that the girl her carrier had called out to get the shock of her life seeing her on the team's back. And then the moment fled. "We can talk tomorrow, Hinata." He turned the corner and continued running at full speed. Soon, he finished that length as well, but nothing else lay beyond that. It looked like a massive, empty field. "Where is it?" the clone asked as they came to a stop. "This is the location," the Sumo Kunoichi asked in surprise. "I don't see anything." "Hold up, let me try something." Naruto took the time to activate his save mode, and in an effort to filter the chakra felt a definite, if, in the location. Yep, it's there, but not there at the same time. Ah, the power of Hyunjutsu. "I'm at a loss, Naruto. What do we do?" said Sludge. He said matter-of-factly. "It's like I'll have to summon it, but much more complicated. I only know the answer to the problem, but not the formula to get the answer." "Get it?" He released his mode to become vulnerable. "Sorta," she admitted. "What'll you do?" He walked over to what looked like an ordinary waist-high wooden post close to the front of the open land. Looking both ways to ensure no one else was watching, he dragged his hand across the top of the rough post that had nails sticking up. "Why'd you do that?" she exclaimed. "You could get tetanus." Jinchuriki. The clone drawled. "Kami, I thought you were already brought up to speed on this." "Indeed." Naruto agreed. He allowed Matsuri to disembark, and she had to lean on the rather sturdy clone. He then went through a number of hand seals in a blur, before slamming his cut hand on the post again. Summoning technique. Ethereal resonance. The kanji from the jutsu crept all over from the palm of his hand and the post and into the whole area of the land. The minute characters then glowed bright colors of blue, yellow and white, making the landscape look like something from a fantasy. The glow became exponential, and became like floodlights that shone into all directions, more like a multicolored sun if nothing else. The trio had to shield their eyes. When the light dimmed from between the cracks of their hands, they beheld a most magnificent looking home. And that was putting it mildly. "Well, Naruto," Matsuri spoke up after a long while. "Home sweet home, huh?" He could only nod dumbly. "I know. Wow, Matsuri, put it. You've been saying that for 5 minutes, right into my ear." "Naruto, you quit saying, I know. You've been saying that for as long as I have been saying, wow. She was on his back again as they finally came to the front door of the magnificent residential building. It wasn't jewel encrusted or anything of the sort of riches, but one could definitely agree with another on the point of it being very stately in design. In design for comfort, size, statues for decorations, hanging gardens, as well as ground-grown gardens filled with sweet fragranced flowers like jasmine that bloomed in the nighttime at its apex of development. The whole property, judging from the size of the open land that previously occupied the space, was expansive, and every area must have served a purpose. Naruto had learned from Jiraiya that the Namikaze were primarily merchants than ninja. While they were a large family, only half of them actually became ninjas in profession. Merchants invested what they earned, ninjas killed and invested what they earned, and soon, they were as influential as the senju in status. It was truly a pity that they had passed away from a ghastly illness that left only his father alive at the age of 6. The man inherited all, and now it was he. Who could he himself leave this to? Should he bite the dust? Naruto, aren't you going to open the door? Matsuri asked. Her carrier seemed to have been lost in thought for a few minutes, as he seemingly stared past the door. Was he that overwhelmed? He came back to reality and shook his head to clear it. I'm fine. Cage Bunshin, open the door. Sure, boss. The clone that carried her pack took hold of the elegantly gilded doorknob and opened the door. They wasted no time getting inside, and there, they realized that the inside was practically as large as it indicated on the outside. Don't forget to take off your sandals, boss. The clone reminded. It placed the pack by the door before dispersing. My clone gives good advice. Naruto raised his eyebrow. Well, yeah, Matsuri agreed. He is you, remember. And you give good advice too, you know. Like when I was packing up in Suna. Oh, sure. Naruto didn't think of himself like that, but he felt good to be esteemed for what he didn't necessarily think was substantial in the first place. Thanks. It does feel good to be appreciated. No problem. As he kicked off his sandals, he realized that he was in the living room. There were the usual things one would find in such a room, like a centerpiece table, a couple of armchairs, a sofa and the like. He went over to an armchair, turned and let Matsuri fall into it. Phew, this is comfy enough to sleep in, she exclaimed. She pretended to draw a snore while Naruto knelt down in front of her and took hold of her ankles. What are you doing? Sandals, he replied, as he tugged at one from the small grip at the back. Oh, what a gentleman, she remarked coyly. You gonna sweep me off my feet, too? He gave no immediate response as he took them off and placed them by the doorway, then shut the door itself. You wish. I don't have to wish. You already are, she continued in all seriousness. Was it? He asked in a dumbfounded tone. Oh, of course you are. You've been nothing but one since I met you. Guys in Suna are really chauvinistic. It's hard for Kunoichi there to really advance. That's why so many of us look up to Tamari-sama. She's like a measuring post, so to speak. That's so. I don't know of any guys in the league who would think so, since the Hokage's a woman. But if I could think of a person who would have that mentality as my old teammate. Sakura, she asked in surprise. No, Sasuke. Heard him going on about that one time. It's probably because he grew up around fangirls. The Uzu Namikaze walked to an armchair next to hers and sat in it. In any case, we did hard traveling today. We haven't really had a bath, or eaten anything. The brunette suddenly remembered that she didn't have any of the ramen at the stand. She'd regret it tomorrow, she supposed. You taking me out to eat? Bathing me? I'm still fairly handicapped, in case you haven't noticed. Take her out to eat. What's she mean? Like a date or something? Faye, your only real problem is exhaustion. He stroked his chin in thought. I am not getting into a shower with you, young lady. Didn't like what you saw. Don't go there. Listen, maybe I can just make a quick run to the Hokage and she'll give me something to give you. Maybe a soldier pill could help. I miss chakra. Go do that, please. Or leave a clone here to keep you company. He got up and drew on his sandals. Why not send a clone? If she's in a bad mood, the clone won't last. But I'm nearly indestructible. Sage mode and all. Yeah, she muttered. She did enjoy talking to him. Perhaps a clone would do just as good. Hurry back. He quickly created a clone and opened the door. Yes, dear. We're not married. Whatever gave you that idea? You said so, not me. He yelled in jest as he dashed off into the night. The clone shut the door and faced the girl, only to see her muttering to herself while a cloud seemed to have settled over her head. Equals X equals X equals. She still had yet to believe what had just happened. 2 Narutos had run past her. One had a pack with a storage scroll on top and seemed to be filled with traveling stuffs and thing of the sort, and the other which she was certain was the real one. Had a girl on his back. What just happened? Did she sleep through something important? Did she fail to receive a notice? Or was she just seeing things? The girl was getting a piggyback by her longtime crush. Naruto-kun, she whispered to herself. Why were you carrying her? She ran around the corner, and as discreetly and as quiet as she could, turned on her Byakugan. At that point, she saw the 3 continue running until they must have passed the limits of the Hyuga compound area. She strayed right and focused on them, and soon, she watched them stop in front of a small wooden post. She knew the post. She had once hung her backpack on it while she trained by herself in the flatland field that stretched behind it. They seemed to be speaking about something, and she wasn't that well versed in reading lips yet. Then, she observed the girl taken off of Naruto's back, and secretly enjoyed the fact of that. However, she noticed Naruto drag his hand across the rough top of it and cringed. She knew that the post had a nasty top, but then Naruto seemingly went through hand seals and slammed his hand on the post. Then, she seemed to have been knocked back by a concussive strike to her eyesight and had to shut off her Byakugan. Blurs filled her vision, and then she saw a home seemingly waver into sight. As soon as she observed it with a reactivated Byakugan, she rushed home. Equals X equals X equals. The night was probably as normal as it could get. Matsuri got the pill, recovered to some extent, and took care of her personal hygiene in what seemed a guest shower. Naruto did as well in another, and soon after, ate dinner that he practically took out of his arm. Fairly normal. Both changed and went to bed. Naruto slept in what he believed was a guest bedroom, and was adjacent to the next one that Matsuri decided to take up residence in. The kunoichi wasted no time in unpacking what little she had all over the room, but Naruto was mellow in his. He did unseal some clothes to put in the wardrobe, but that was just to say he was settling in, to sever his ties to his apartment. The guest beds were far more comfortable than his old one, and sleep took them as soon as their head hit the pillows. The morning was also fairly normal. Both woke up in an unfamiliar setting, and both asked themselves where they were. Both opened the doors at the same time, and as soon as they saw each other, they simultaneously asked, "Where are we?" "What? I asked you first." "Wait a minute. Oh yeah, we're in my dad's house." "Wow." Quote, wow. And they all said the same, in that remarkable conversation, with uncanny effect. Alright, time for breakfast, and then some exploring to get familiar. Matsuri suggested. "I got lost twice last night. What you got to eat? We don't have to use my food. Food's probably in the kitchen." Naruto grumbled. He regarded her for a brief moment. She was in brown thigh tights, and a vest. Her pink bra was visible in the thin material of her top. He briefly cursed himself for even noting the color of it. She as well paid him an observing glance. He was in a pair of boxers that had chibi toads all over it and an orange merino, of all things. She suppressed a blush as his merino seemed to be airtight on his upper torso, and practically was a cast over his body and all the physicalities it had to offer for eye candy seekers. Not to say that she was one, but damn, she was impressed. Well, so one of us is going to make breakfast then. Yup, he said with a sigh. Rock, paper, scissors, and it's best 2 out of 3. Equals x equals x equals. There wasn't even a need for a tiebreaker, she wondered as she looked around the pantry and cupboards. Is all of this safe? I mean, the house hasn't been accessed for at least all of your life, right? That's right, he replied from his place around the stool table. It was rather like a bar counter, and he was on one side of it, reading a book. She was on the other side where all the storage like said cupboards, refrigerator, low-lying deep freezer, stoves, oven, and completely befuddled as she looked around and tried to gather her bearings. Everything's safe. It's like it was in a non-existent dimension like a storage seal, so no time passed. It's like we entered the house the second after they left it. But why they stocked up on so much food, I have no idea. It was just the two of them at the time. I'm seeing seals in the food storage spaces. They must have been doing like what you do now, what with those seals on your arm. Like father, like son, I suppose. He answered with a grin. Or maybe it was Ka-chan. I dunno. Both were sealing masters. So you say. She took out eggs of the fridge and rested them against a rack next to the stove. She then took out some bacon she found earlier in the freezer section of the fridge. So you say, indeed. But I'm feeling overwhelmed. I mean, I expected to stay in a bedroom, yeah. In your 2-bedroom apartment, I thought when you suggested it the first time. But damn, I never expected something like a palace, or even like some kind of mansion. Naruto frowned. Possessions like this made a deathbed terrible, nor was it soothing for one's life. His father must have felt even more lonely and isolated in this big-ass place, never mind how luxurious it was. How do you want your eggs? Best sunny side ups, ever. He congratulated. Why, thank you, dear. We're not married. He momentarily stopped. I know. I just said it so you'll stop saying it to me. It's creeping me the hell out. He smiled at this. Thank you, dear, and I'll be sure to continue addressing you as such. She growled audibly. Careful, mister. Just 'cause I cook you breakfast, doesn't mean that we're in a relationship. You're boarding in my house. I take care of you like a man would his wife, and you just cook me breakfast, along for yourself. He teased. I think we do. HMPH. Maybe friends is as far I'd put it. She mumbled as she took up his empty plate so she could wash up the breakfast things. I'm boarding, true, and I only cooked because I lost that game. You sure you didn't cheat? Nope, and I'm glad you won, anyway. Think of it as working to earn your keep. He said smugly. Ha ha, she said in monotone, but still laced with the most potent of sarcasm. Anyway, I'm not really doing anything today, and I don't think you are. Oh, well, I have to stick with you then. But there's a register. You're not of family blood, so when you sign this register, you can explore all you want. A register? She questioned his explanation. Oh sure, Jiraiya said that until he did, he had to constantly be on his toes about where he went, and things like that. Certain booby traps, killer doorknobs that electrocuted you to unconsciousness or death, things like that. He said nonchalantly, ignoring how her eyes got larger the more he told. I could have died when I just traipsed off to find the shower the first time. Oh yeah, you could have, he answered matter-of-factly. Why didn't you tell me? She yelled, now furious, but still fearful of even continuing with the dishes. I didn't want to make you worry out the night. I intended to find the register this morning. Oh, and aren't you considerate? She remarked in the driest tone she could muster. Didn't want to worry poor old me. What if I had gotten hurt or killed? I'd apologize to you in the hospital, or posthumously. He answered plainly. Now let's go. It should be in this building. Well, it's only in that building across the way. The register can't be moved, so you have to come with me. Me? I'm not moving an inch. 5 minutes of carrying her over her shoulder, screaming for him to keep her off the ground later, they arrived in the small, rather cubicle-like place. It was actually in a much larger building that seemed to have no purpose. Just a large perfectly square building, with the cubicle in the center. Seals practically colored the whole cubicle from a white paint to a black, and Matsuri was nearly in a cardiac arrest after seeing it. "Get me out of here. Just find me a hotel. Girl, stop being a crybaby." He grabbed the doorknob, and felt a mild shock from it. He paid it no mind. It was probably a test for his heritage. He stepped inside with her, and put her down. No sooner than he put her down, she was standing on his feet, yelling her head off. "I don't wanna die. You're not going to die," he mumbled, trying to ignore the pain in his toes as she had her full weight on them. She was at the perfect height for his nose to be 1 inch from the top of her head, and got a whiff of it. Some sort of fruity aroma. Very nice indeed. He mentally slapped himself before he eyed the book and the quill feather in the ink jar above it. "Look, there's the pen. All you have to do is take it up, sign your name in the first empty slot, and you're safe. I guarantee it." He hugged her to further reassure her. She gradually came down from her emotional high and peered up into his face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Promise." A flash through memory lane was all it took before he gazed down at her. "I promise." "You promise?" She questioned again to ensure what he said. "My promises are as good as done. It's perfectly safe." She did feel safe, although they were currently standing in some Kami-forsaken booth with some kind of a book that needed to be signed to allow her to live on the compound. She did feel safe in his embrace, even though it was purely friendly, and for encouragement purposes. She hesitated briefly, before getting off of his feet, relinquished his arms and approached the book. She steeled her nerves and took up the feather, dipped it in the ink, and wrote the kanji for her name. "I don't have a last name. Is that alright?" "It's fine. Now press a bloody fingerprint next to the name, and you're done." He inveigled. She obliged, and bit her thumb to draw some blood. She then pressed the bloody thumbprint next to her name, and exhaled, long and deep. "I did it. Good. Now let's leave." "Oh, okay." He gave her way to pass as she did. "After you, dear." She punched him playfully in the shoulder before she grabbed the doorknob. She felt a mild electrical shock, and jumped in a startle. "What was that?" "It means you passed." "Huh, if you didn't pass, you wouldn't have been able to even ask me that question." "Not in the state of still being alive, I should say." "Well, holy crap," she mumbled. "Anything else you can't bother to notify me about?" "Lots and lots, my dear. Lots and lots." He closed the gate securely, and he felt chakra course through it and stayed. "I think the gate is now on, to kill anyone with unregistered blood, or at the very least, knock them unconscious." "Well, I suppose that's alright." The girl noted. "No one has any business over here, right? Besides, anyone can just jump over the gate." Naruto picked up a nearby pebble and threw it above the gate. As it reached the general line the gate offered, it was incinerated into dust. Ignoring the Suna Kunoichi's widened eyes, he shrugged. "I don't think so. This is pretty much as private as it gets. And just think about it. Pretty much everyone is going to know about my heritage by the end of the day, and they'll be trying to get over into the yard." The girl groaned. "And if I stay at the house that kills people who try to get in at the gates, or even tries to knock on the gate, nothing more than the very best PR team ever made in existence currently can sweep that under the figurative rug." "Stow your bellyache," Naruto chastised. He quickly unsealed a large sheet of cardboard, a red marker, and a hammer and a nail. "I'll just make a sign. It won't take a minute. Comma, comma, comma." That took 2 minutes. Matsuri grumbled, but at least the warning clearly states, "Avoid attempted entry upon loss of life and limb." And the skull and crossbones is pretty much guaranteed to get through to anyone that the place is dangerous. Frankly, I think the whole security is overkill. Naruto stepped back and admired the sign he nailed to the post. "Well, yeah, it's overkill. But better safe than sorry. Let's go. They started off away from the compound, the early afternoon sun giving them short shadows as they walked. I used to be pretty thick-headed. Maybe I still am. If I were a few years younger, I'd probably say to myself, what a cheap trick, and headbutt the gate or something. You, thick? She asked dumbfounded. Wouldn't peg you for one. You seem so, enlightened to some degree. You forgot what I told you about when I was a genin. You said that you were unsubmitting failure. Mad, kinda like me, I guess. The brunette remarked. Maybe all genin are like that. Anyway, it took us the whole morning to see most of your living area once, and now you're showing me around the village. I hope that doesn't take me the rest of my life. You don't need to see the entire village in one day. Only the good parts. What's that supposed to mean? The area I moved out of last night was really seedy, to say the least. Complete debauchery. Meaning? She asked in a confused tone. This was a new word. Sex, drugs, alcohol, basically everything that people do to have a good time, by bad morals and standards. He replied. He walked a bit quicker now, and she had to struggle to keep up with him. Seeing her lag behind, he grabbed her wrist to aid her by nearly pulling her along. Put a little pep in your step. What the why? She tried to pull her arm back, but his grip was like that of steel. What's wrong? Someone's following us, he screamed whispered. He quickly tried to initiate his save mode, but he noted that it took several seconds more than normal, and he presumed it to be because he wasn't calm. As he tried to sense for their chakra signatures, he realized that several people were in fact following him. That did not improve his mood. What's happening? She fumed. I'm not taking another step until you tell me what's going on. Too bad, Naruto muttered. He started running, and she had to start running with him to avoid being dragged. If you get left behind, chances are, you'll be mobbed with questioning, and are you really ready for that? Of course I can handle that. Let me go. Come on, it'll be fun to train yourself by running from them. Naruto said in a large grin, unheeding that if the girl was to even trip while she was being pulled along at this speed, she'd get seriously hurt. Don't you want to be able to catch up to me with pure physical abilities without using up all of your chakra? Tempting, she answered sarcastically. No, besides, it's just questions. I can handle that. Suppose spawn of the Coyote turns out to be the Yondaimi's son, he spoke as if stating something obvious. Moves into his expansive and expensive house in the night after it explodes into existence with a fantastic light show, and that soon a girl with him, is she spying on him? Isn't that why we need to answer before rumors start? She yelled. Is she his girlfriend? They are living together. Look, they're holding hands. He wagged his eyebrows suggestively while speaking in a mock surprised voice. She stared at him stupidly. I didn't sign up for this. And, her eyes panned down to where he held her wrist. You set me up. Are you going to take the fall, or are you going to run? She yanked one last time and retrieved her arm. I'm running, she sighed. When we get back home, I'm going to poison you if I ever have to cook for you again. That's the spirit, he congratulated, after his brief mind wandering as to the fact of his speech, if she was his girlfriend or not. Truth be told, he didn't mind if he did have a girlfriend, but he had to be completely impartial if he wanted to be a perfect sage. If Matsuri was his, whatever. She was fairly good looking, sure. Blunt, yes. Tenacious, yes. Good idealism, yes. Then his mind started wandering a bit more before he had to quell it. He had barely registered the fact that the little nature chakra he had garnered for save mode had depleted and it was gone. Come along, dear, he shouted. God, she yelled in exasperation. You're making things worse. I know, he giggled. Bigger risk, dangerous stakes, higher blood pressure, more fun. This is fun, she screamed in anger. When we get out of this, so help me, I'm going to. That's the spirit. They were fleeing through the streets like runaway mental patients as they yelled at one another. Soon, the six following them had increased exponentially as people saw Ryuzu Namikaze running with his sage cloak flapping behind him, not to mention the girl they had seen on his back the previous night. "Look, it's Namikaze, and his girlfriend," she growled in her throat. "I blame you for this, Naruto." Naruto glanced behind him. "Whoa, it must be everyone except for Nara's back there trying to catch up to us. All that mob back there needs is a lack of misbegotten worship in their eyes, some torches, some pitchforks and such, and the both of us would look like people trying to avoid getting lynched." She chanced to look behind them and saw what looked like angry girls and gulped. "I really didn't ask for this. They might love you now, or some crap like that, but it looks like they want to kill me. Makes for good encouragement, my dear. Would you stop?" She turned back around to her face her core and her eyes widened as she saw a cart in her and Naruto's way. She hurdle leapt over it as Naruto's side flipped dramatically over it to clear it. "Is this normal to you, or something?" "No." He smiled cheerily, which made her question his sanity. "But damn, we must have looked good doing that. Couldn't you have just jumped over it like normal people?" she asked in a huff as they continued running from the people who seemed unable to make up their mind to say, "Wait for us Namikaze-sama," or to say, "Get the Suno girl." "I'm not normal." "No." He seemed relieved at her answer. "Thank goodness. Abnormal is interesting, and normal is boring. Is this boring?" "No." "Good. Now let's continue to run to preserve our lives," he said simply. "No chakra. Keep to the streets, and enjoy yourself." He chided. All too soon, he had drifted too close to the wall, and people were crowded close to it, apparently watching some kind of intense strategic board game. He quickly put up a right foot on the all, before doing a picture-perfect tic-tac wall run on it to get over them. "Yeah, I'm awesome," he grunted as he quit on the fourth step and landed back when he was past them. "Can you do that without chakra, girlie?" "No," she admitted. "But can you do this?" She ran straight for a passing cart in her way and leapt forward at it in a dive. As she was about to make contact on it, she placed both palms down and brought both knees through the space between her arms as she vaulted cleanly free to the other side. Easily done as she landed on the other side, she had a smirk on her face. "A lot of people are afraid for their knees." "Congratulations," he offered. It was a good-looking ball, and he one-upped it by jumping legs out first at his next obstacle, and when they were almost over, he braced his arms on it to help guide him over. "A free-running girl, huh? Hobbies," she admitted. Naruto grinned. "Damn, she's perfect. She's perfect, perfectly able-bodied," he assured himself in his mind. "Crap, I haven't even known her for a proper 48 hours. What the hell's going on with me?" he asked himself. He could have sworn that he heard the coyote chuckle in his mind but thought nothing of it. "Oh well. Naruto, look out," Matsuri yelled. He instantly returned to reality to find himself looking at a straight concrete wall. They had come to a T-intersection and needed to make a choice right away. Well, at least him anyway. He was only 1 meter away from the thing. "Over," he yelled. He made a small hop to make a break as he landed, before jumping at the fence and stepped on it in a wall run, before making 2 more steps and grabbed the top. She did likewise, and both were standing at the top in 2 seconds. "Show off," he declared as he back-flipped off forwards in a twist and landed. Glancing at her, she only did a front flip and landed securely on the balls of her feet. "Ah, I'm better," he remarked snidely. "You've had more practice," she said shortly. And then the forgotten ninja leapt cleanly over the wall, and they were forced to run again. You used shadow clones to throw them off?" Ayame asked. "Yeah, I had him henge into me and Matsuri, here," Naruto affirmed. "Remember how I used to obsess about free running to tire myself out?" Ayame neighed. "Yeah, you were all over the place," the ramen mistress replied with a nod. "Well, she free runs too," Naruto explained. "We were freaking awesome." "Not that awesome," Matsuri said grimly. Everyone cornered us at the gate entrance to your house. Man, I nearly got axed. And 2 people died when they touched the gate to get in after us. I was really sorry about that, and I already apologized to their families, and a little money restitution, despite the fact that Tsunade Bachan said I didn't have to since there was a warning. Naruto claimed. But that's 2 whole days ago. The whole village knows that my name's Naruto Uzu Namikaze. Most people give me some respect now, others don't try to shun me as much, but the thing is, he trailed off as he leaned in closer. I'm going to have to live the rest of my life looking over my back. A lot of people have it out for my dad, and they're going to hash it out with me. So Matsuri, you're in danger by extension. No more boring normalcy, yes. The Suna Kunoichi let her head bang onto the counter. Ah, couldn't you have just stayed for? My life wouldn't be in danger, would it? No, but you're a ninja, surely. You know that always being in danger is a given, don't you? The blonde responded sensibly. Huh, but none of the others from my generation has even tried to talk to me, yet. Naruto said darkly. News must have spread. I wonder how Tenten and Lee told the others. It must be why, he said in his reasoning. About what? The 2 females asked. Oh nine. Naruto said tersely. I'm sure you knew already. Ayame ne. Oh nine. She parroted. She then slapped her palm against her palm repeatedly. Yeah, of course I knew. But you told them. He told 2 of them in Suna. Matsuri commented. They must have blabbed to the others, if I'm interpreting him correctly. If they're your friends, they won't care. They're not my friends, Naruto stated. They're like people I saw from time to time, made fun of me every now and again, and saw me like a reliable knucklehead. If I were really their friend, at least one of them would at the very least ask me, hey, Naruto, wanna grab a bite to eat? Nothing like that ever happened. Yikes. Matsuri agreed. Nothing. Huh, yuck. He said in resignation. They didn't know back then, and still treated me like, it's what's his face. Not really like that, but really, I was alone. Ah, you gonna cry. Ayame teased. I'm your surrogate sister, for crying out loud. Do you want to cry on my shoulder? Hush and gimme my ramen, sis. Naruto said in jest, as he took it from her. Matsuri carefully watched her companion and noted how that the fact remained that the matter had not been smoothed over as Naruto would like them to believe. For his entire episode, the person who she had thought to be stronger than her looked vulnerable and weak. He still appeared that way, and wondered why she was still inactive. Hey, Naruto. Yeah, Matsuri. She started awkwardly. I'll be your friend, if that says anything, I guess. He stared at her, and stared, sure, why not? He inched his stool over closer to hers and grabbed her in an immediate side hug. Thanks a lot, now I have one friend, plus, he trailed off as he began thinking. Am I your first? She asked in a disbelieving tone. Well, I was thinking of the Sabakas, but I'm guessing that it more like adopted family members. I talked to Kankuro and Tamari, through the brotherly bond with Gaara, I'm afraid. So, 1 + 0, yep, you're my first. He squeezed tighter. Pleased to meet you, friend. She felt her face heat a little before she tried to shake him off, but it was in vain. Damn, you're too clingy. Get off of me. Yes dear. He immediately let go to avoid getting poked with her chopsticks. TCH. I make a friend, and I nearly get killed. Figures. All was silent for a minute, before the 3 began to laugh. He finished his meditating with a yawn as he came to. The Kyuubi was still acting as he always had been. That is, like an insufferable bastard whose ego was bigger than he was. Naruto was surprised that the cage was big enough for it, and the beast itself. The seal was fine, no change as far as he could see. Well, that's that. I wonder what to do next. I should get some training in. He whispered to himself. I can't afford to go soft. He pulled on his orange and black tracksuit, hoping for a little excitement for the day. It was getting monotonous sticking around in his metaphorical, but is practically a castle. It had been a week since his heritage was known, and as far as he knew, lovers of his father were now after him, as well as enemies. Not his father enemies, but his enemies. There were still some who hated him for what he wore, and at night sometimes, he could see some outside trying to throw Molotov bombs onto the property, hoping that it would burn a building or at least burn his grass, he presumed. Matsuri had practically been corralled in like him, and needless to say, their faces to one another were getting a bit too familiar. There were likely to be rumors outside that they really were courting. He held that as his fault. He went downstairs and found her reading a book. She had curled up in an armchair to do so with her legs over the side of the chair arm, and he found it homely. Simple, yet still attractive. He promptly squashed those thoughts as he knew he would start imagining and recalling the time when he trial read one of Jiraiya's books when they were on the training trip. When Jiraiya had found him with it later, he laughed at the boy who was fighting with himself to put it down, but would still pick it up to continue reading a minute later. Jiraiya had written a sex scene based on a secretary who sat like that in her boss's chair, and to be frank, Jiraiya was graphic. Ah, damn corruption. Naruto fumed to himself as his face reddened. Keep it together. I'm not a perv, I'm not a perv, I'm not a perv. Despite his best efforts not to, his thoughts wandered to the description Jiraiya had wrote. For the life of him, he had no idea why he kept hearing the words in Matsuri's voice. Oh, Naruto-sama, I've been waiting for you. Matsuri purred sensuously as she cocked one leg up innocently. I've been having some trouble with your directory log. It's too big, and it won't go through the mailing slot. Are you sure? Naruto answered in a sultry voice as he approached her. Let us try, my dear. It will have to fit, no matter how much I have to force. Naruto, why the hell are you looking at me and talking like that? Matsuri yelled in incredulity. Naruto seemed to have gotten a glazed look in his eyes and spoke as if he was going mental. However, as she spoke, he came back from wherever the hell he was as his eyes widened and his jaw dropped, completely flummoxed. From the Uzumamikaze's perspective, all had come back to reality again, and the Suna Kunoichi who had a flabbergasted look on her face. In his episode, it had been one of lust and, wait, she didn't move her leg. What the hell just happened? He felt growth in his loins and turned sharply and plopped himself down in the sofa, and sat with one leg across his knee at the crook of it. The same sitting position that males typically used to hide boners in public. Oh, he quickly thought of what he said as she sat up and stared at him. We're not fit. He yelled the last. We've been stuck in here for days. We need to get some exercise in. She gawked at him in disbelief. Even if I have to force you out of the house. He bellowed at the top of his lungs. She wagged a finger at him while her eyes narrowed, sitting up properly. She looked as if she wanted to tell him off, or to his growing fear, catch on to his fib, or even worse, the actual truth. But instead, she replied with, Didn't I tell you to stop calling me, dear? Deciding that he was in the clear, he nodded fervently to appease her. Yeah, I forgot, sorry. You know what, forget it. She sighed in resignation. I'm getting something to eat. She got up and left her book in the chair, and Naruto in his seat thanking his lucky stars that he was alive and in one piece. As soon as she left the room, he bolted as well upstairs to take a cold shower, all the while cursing to himself about his damned hormones. Equals X equals X equals. Hey, are you sane again? Yeah, he said evenly. He had a right to be. It was now 7 a.m., 14 hours since his little accident. He had a right to be and speak the way he was currently. He had to save face, and in this disposition. Are you sure? 'Cause I don't want to bunk with a psycho on a property that can kill people. She said bluntly. You'll be fine. He intoned. But still, I'm getting tired of being cooped up. I'm going out. Want to follow? About damn time, if you ask me. She responded hastily. I want to meet people. Not being stuck with your crazy ass without anyone to call on in case you snap. She took a sip of her green tea while she looked out the window, gazing at the gate. I'm not insane. Dangerous. Hi, he said matter-of-factly. Now, what to do? He had an all-black coat on, one of the exact size and make of his sage cloak. He wore this occasionally, and only Jiraiya knew that he only wore that thing when he was in a no-nonsense mood. Gone was the emotional youth, and in his place, an unshakable, unremitting, unrelenting force of nature that was a sage. He was no longer a person who could really be reasoned with, that was because he used reason and cold logic itself. Pity that Gaara didn't know of this temperament he had sometimes. His sensei could have written a private letter to his teammate regarding that new side of him, but what could he say? He knew only the properties to this personality, but had no idea to what could trigger it. Perhaps it was one of the traits and effects of becoming a complete sage, Naruto himself believed. Matsuri had seen the obvious 180-degree change in his persona and wondered what could possibly be wrong with him. She had never seen him like this, and wondered if he knew of her existence as he walked briskly to the gate and she lagged behind him in terms of speed. They were soon at the entrance-exit gate and without further ado, Naruto unchambered one of the massive sliding bolts and opened it. Someone tried to duck past him to get onto the property, but Naruto firmly grasped the Chunin by the neck in a choke hold, and pushed through the man away over the crowd's head with a thrown distance of 100 meters. Hints of visible white senjutsu force emanated around his movements. I shall go about living my life and minding my business, and all of you should attend to yours. The Uzunamikaze spoke clearly and stark evenness to the crowd of civilians and ninja alike as he gazed at them with toad-like eyes. Leave me, and my companion be. He gestured to the Suna ambassador who exited behind him and stood slightly behind him, in case anyone decided to risk throwing something. None did anything of the sort as the crowd of around 3 or 4 dozen trickled away before mass leaving in all directions away from the pair, and Naruto nodded to himself. Fine. Matsuri, please lock the gate. She was slightly startled to hear him address her like that. He said nothing alluring or repulsive, but he commanded such a presence that she did the task immediately, without any room for complaint or comment. He formed the ram seal, and after a period of 5 seconds, felt a potent pulse of nearly visible chakra radiate from his person that lifted the dust and disturbed the foliage of shrubs and trees. This task completed, he beckoned to her. Shall we go? Without even waiting for her answer, he started walking away from the direction of the commercial area of the village. The compound was in the east, the commercial area in the center, the residential districts mostly ran along the western and south ends, and the training grounds took up the north, along with everything else. The road they were on only went in 2 directions. One lead to commercial, and the other, she'd never gone in that one before. Where are we going? She asked in trepidation. I'm going to see the others of my generation. He answered without turning back to her to speak. They're all together. You I have. No, you don't have to follow. He interrupted. You're free to make your own decisions. She was seriously considering making a run for it to get away from this stranger, but resisted the urge. All come. He didn't acknowledge the answer as he continued walking. So, we all know then, I take it. Tenten told Hinata, your cousin just closed up, man. She's just, there, like some kind of mute person and deaf person. Why would you tell her? Neji felt his blood pressure spike as Kiba tattled on Tenten, who suddenly decided that she had to go. However, the sense that she was running away from a problem which was her teammates' wrath when they met 4 times a week told her that it was a bad idea. I felt that since pretty much everyone was in on it. She's infatuated with him. What do you think this could do to her? If anyone were to have told her, it would be him. Not hearing it from someone else. The Hyuga was uncharacteristically emotional as his eyes swiveled to see Hinata seated on a log under a tree around 30 yards away in the shade. Frankly, this has been nothing but a massive pileup. Take it easy, Neji, Ino cautioned. Besides, I think Tenten's right. It wouldn't be fair if everyone else knew and not her. Shikamaru, who was lying on the ground close by, nodded. You have no idea how wrong you are. I asked my dad about it. It turns out that all of us from this generation weren't meant to know. It's an S-class secret, and no matter what kind of standing we have, our heads will roll if we talk about it so freely. If Naruto gets pissed at us, you think he'll kill you. All he has to do is tell Lady Tsunade and it's our heads on a damn kite. How troublesome this is. Whoa whoa, Tenten held up her hands. I could get executed for telling you guys. You and me, Shino said in monotone. Why? Because he told me and Ino, and he was quite open. Shikamaru had a panic attack as he heard the Aburama. Lee, who normally shouts everything toward the biggest gossip girl in the village. Hey, Ino defended. I'm taking offense to this. And besides, I went to my 2 cents straight after, and he set me straight already about not telling anyone. And Lee was a bit more discreet than usual. It was just us in the flower shop. Shino was there getting rid of the insects that ate the plants, and Lee came in and told us. Akamaru barked repeatedly and Kiba frowned. Akamaru says he heard you tell Sakura, but it was fine, cause Sakura told you that she knew already. Neji glared at the platinum blonde who had the decency to look ashamed as she muttered about dogs minding their own business. So, to recap, everyone told everyone, and only Naruto, Sakura and Choji, who is also in on the secret, are unavailable currently. Sakura's working at the hospital and Choji's with his dad helping out in the Akamichi restaurant. Ino volunteered. And Naruto's holed up in his fancy new palace of a home. He's the most sought after guy in the village. People are throwing themselves at him, and things at him. Last I heard when he was out running with some Suna girl. It must be Matsuri, Lee shouted. He had invited her to stay with him for boarding. Now he has a youthful house. What the heck is this guy on? Kiba muttered to his dog. Akamaru began a staccato of barking, after which Kiba's eyes widened as he paled in fright. Tenten noticed this and asked him what was wrong. Akamaru just told me. Good morning, all. A new voice spoke. All eyes turned to look at the owner, and all felt mixed reactions when they saw the main subject of their ruminations standing 20 yards from them, standing at ease while his face was stoic. I trust that you've all had a pleasant morning thus far. Matsuri came out from behind him, apparently having walked in his exact footsteps. She stood slightly behind him, and the apprehensive look on her face did not add to their mood in a happy fashion. Upon looking up, Hinata's eyes widened in recognition as she sat up and approached to stand next to the others. The morning was fine, Kiba said lamely. Anyway, nice to see you, Naruto. You don't sound earnest, Naruto said in an unnerving monotone. For some reason, the tone was even flatter than Shino's own, and much more condescending, if that were possible. It also had traces of sarcasm for seasoning. You sound displeased and discontented to see me. I wonder as to why that could be. Ino put her hands on her hips in a coquettish manner as she eyed her fellow blonde. What's with the new look, Naruto? All dressed in that black coat. There's nothing wrong with which I adorn myself on the outside, Naruto replied, but it seems to me that you have been freely conversing with one another pertaining to what I carry on the inside. That's true, Shikamaru admitted as he got up off of the ground where he had been laying on his back. There has been quite a bit of that. You all know, I presume. I expected no less from one who speaks more than he listens, and in a volume most unnecessary. He said pointedly, glancing at Lee, and another who would run to tell her teammate not even an hour after she herself heard. They were all silent, but Neji was too busy considering how Naruto could have surprised them all with his appearance, when he walked over to them from across the field. He was beginning to feel less of a Hyuga than he ought to be. 1. What are your opinions? Naruto asked plainly. You now know of the Kyuubi. All of you. I don't know how to feel. Ino said hurriedly. Can I go? I'm not keeping, nor withholding your departure. However, keep in mind that I would like to hear an honest opinion from you before you leave. He answered, I will not delay you, but it would serve you well to know that failure to state your feedback, or if it's a rejoinder, he trailed off. After Ino asked Neji discreetly what the last word meant and he told her that it was basically a negative reaction to something. I may perhaps hold it against you, not physically, of course, but I'm sure you can already tell the difference. They all could. They all could. To be frank, I find no fault with you. Shino said, the curse of the Aburame to carry their hives of Kikaichu in their bodies have earned us scorn. To know that you share a similar burden, adds only respect to which I already had for you. Naruto nodded to this and turned to Shikamaru. The Nara merely yawned disinterestedly. I don't care, but if you try to rip me to shreds, then I will. Naruto actually smiled grimly for a split second before it fell back into dry expression. He then turned to Tenten, who grinned. Neji talked to me about how cool you were, and I suppose he's right. You deserve better, and I hope that nothing changes between any of us. Yosh, we cried, and the beast that he and Gama-sama transformed into fought Gaara's Shikaku of the desert. In fact, I wish I had a beast of my own to have such youthful power. Naruto frowned at this. You wouldn't like it, Lee. Believe me, Neji. I'm fine. Really. Besides, if you weren't under your own control, you could have frozen me. But remind me to kick your ass after you made me take a hit for you from Matsuri. Neji said with a jesting undertone. This was also highly unexpected of him, and the others drew strength from it. Naruto, Ino began. To be honest, when I heard, I became afraid of you. I still am, and this side of you right now just isn't changing that. Perhaps I should release the seal holding back the Kyuubi. He keeps griping at me to do so. No, they all shouted. Ino threw out all caution to the winds and continued hurriedly. You're fine. That's not convincingly honest. Thanks for holding back the beast, okay. Although I have so many questions. And you'll have your answers. Inuzuka, said Inu clan member suddenly felt put on the spot. He sighed. Words escape me, he quoted. Bad or good? Shikamaru asked. Naruto, you're alright, man. But with all that power you've got, I'm Chunin, and you're still a genin. You'll have your clash with me to decide if rank is that important. Hinata, and all breathing among the present nin ceased, save for Hinata and Naruto. Even the wind stopped blowing, and the birds stopped chirping. All sound had abandoned the planet while the two people gazed at each other fixedly. Quote, To be honest, the girl spoke clearly. I didn't know what to think. At first, I wondered if I should hate you, but I can't find it in me to do that. Suddenly, everything made sense. The villager's entire general outlook towards you, and the loneliness you seemed to have wallowed in. It made me angry at myself for my weakness and my inhibitions for not being there beside you when you needed someone. That's when I realized that I don't care that if you were a Jinchuriki. I didn't care that you held a curse. Her volume had steadily increased as she gained confidence in her speech. I didn't care that you held the vein of Konoha's existence. It's because I love you regardless of your burden. Naruto's toad-like eyes seemingly studied and considered the girl inside and out, checking for cracks and lies. But he detected none in her speech, and his current saved mode told him of her integrity. She loved me. Is that it? What happens now? I see. Kiba was about to freak out but his shoulder was grabbed by Neji. Of course. Perhaps the both of you would like to speak alone. The Hyuga suggested pointedly. He quickly shared a look with Hinata, and the girl got the hint. That would be prudent and sensible. Hinata, walk with me. Ryuzu Namikaze asked politely. His countenance had changed somewhat, but it was only in the undertones of his voice. His current persona was still entirely there. Hi, Naruto-kun. She came over to Naruto and stood before him. He gestured a hand backwards as if to say, ladies first, and the heiress did. As she walked on a bit, he turned back to Matsuri. I apologize, Matsuri. There are some unforeseen complications. It's fine, she reassured in a slightly quivering voice. You should go with her. Perhaps it would do you some good to socialize with these of your age. Sure. You'd better catch up. She's waiting on you. She hurried him along while trying to ignore her feeling of her stomach tying itself in knots. She didn't know why, but as she watched him nod a farewell and walk away with the girl who just confessed to him, the feeling grew worse. She didn't know how long she stared after their retreating forms as they disappeared with distance. Finally, she gave an unconvincing shrug before she turned to the others behind her. Well, hey Neji, Tenten, Lee, mind introducing me? I'm new, and I'm going to be around for a while, you know. She brought her wavering confidence back under control as Lee began yelling out everyone's names while the blonde girl started making resolutions on who she needed to speak to. And of course Neji, who was currently admonishing the girl that she'd better not. X equals X equals. They were walking in silence. In fact, they had strolled for all of 15 minutes, and somehow or another, found themselves in the beginning of the compound area. Before Hinata realized it, she was standing in front of the gate to the Hyuga compound. That was made obvious by the two Hyuga guards who were native to the branch family who hailed to her. Good morning again, Hinata-sama. They chorused. Oh, good morning. They had told her the pleasantry earlier that morning, and they were doing so again for the second time. You wish to enter, I take it? One of them asked her. She became confused, and turned to Naruto. Why did you walk me home? I reasoned that home would be where your confidence is strongest, and you would be more reserved. If it were elsewhere, you would be constantly on the lookout for others who could be spying on you, or being constantly disturbed due to my recently acquired social standing in the village. He answered if it were obvious. Are you allowed to bring in guests? Although you are the heiress, I've heard that Hyuga are a bit territorial, in a matter of how many people I've heard are allowed access. I've never had, before. This is a first, she mumbled. The Uzu Namikaze turned to the guards who were having mixed feelings as to what they should do about him. 1. He was still practically the bane of Konoha. 2. He was now, well, the fourth Hokage's son, and 3. If he wanted to, he could just barge his way in anyway. And those amber eyes of his with the horizontal bar made for a rather intimidating stare, even more than their own when they had their Byakugans activated. One did the smart thing, and immediately went to tell the clan head. In 2 minutes, the guard returned and told his fellow security man to open the gate to allow them passage. Upon entry, the guard who had originally left informed Naruto that he should go and speak to Hiyashi-sama before anything else. Naruto approved of this sidetrack, and asked Hinata if she would lead the way to her father. He thanked the girl, and just before he knocked on the door, he was invited inside by the clan head's call. Promptly opening the door, he went inside the room to behold an impressive study. The Hyuga head himself was seated behind a large desk with some paperwork off to the side, but the middle center was completely free of any such obstacles. Good morning, Hiyashi-sama. Naruto greeted. May I have a seat? He gestured to the armchair in front of the same desk, and Hiyashi responded in the affirmative. You may. He seated himself in the armchair, professionally, as one would expect of an aristocrat. May I ask as to why I've been summoned? The Hyuga scrutinized the young man before him. Gone was any evidence of his usually notorious brash behavior. He almost felt disappointed. Not that he missed that side of him, but Naruto appeared to look right at home, sitting across from someone as important as he. He's changed, but he was of his usual nature when last he was seen in public. Hi, it's pertaining to my daughter, Hinata. Naruto didn't even flinch. Please continue. No nervousness or trepidation, No guilt streaks, nothing. It was as if Naruto was the Hyuga, and he wasn't one. You wished to be her guest on the compound. I'm inquiring as to why you would request such a favor. Perhaps you would like her to accompany me to mine. He said the last condescendingly, and Kiyoshi nearly lost his cool. So because he's a double clan head, has more financial assets, and a bigger property, he thinks he's better than me. That he's worthy of my daughter. I would rather you wouldn't. As is the reason why I followed her here. I hope I'm not imposing myself. I merely wished to converse with her, in an area I was sure she would be comfortable. Pray tell what the topic would be of Uzu Namikaze. But of course, Hyuga, at the sound of a lack of an honorary suffix, Kiyoshi ground his teeth at the backhanded blow at his lack of formal respect for him. Especially in his own home. Not even 30 minutes ago, your daughter, Hinata confessed her feelings of and towards me. On the outside, the man was as cool as a cucumber. On the inside, he was a violent myriad of emotions, cursing the team before him, cursing out Hinata, cursing out the lack of formalities, respect, and the fact that Naruto's toad-like gaze was starting to get to him now intimidation-wise while his own wasn't unsettling Naruto in the least. I see. You should speak to her now, then. I suppose that she's been waiting for you long enough. I don't find 2 minutes a lengthy amount of time. So you'd rather keep her waiting? The man exclaimed in growing fury. But to his surprise, Naruto chuckled wryly for a bit before he stood. And so, the Hyuga cracks first. I thought it would be me. Before Kiyoshi could retort, Naruto had already exited out the door, leaving him on his own. A garden, Naruto observed. So be it. He sat down on the swing next to hers, and gazed around. It is beautiful, I admit. The Hyuga clan isn't as two-dimensional as I believed they would be, if they appreciate the wonders of nature to go to this extent. It was actually I who planted and cared for this garden. She offered. I feel relaxed here, knowing that it's the fruit of my labors. I would have expected this from a Yamanaka, but nonetheless, we were to speak of your feelings towards me. Did you mean all that you claimed? I do, she exclaimed. I do. Is it because of my newfound standing I inherited from my parents along with their prestige and wealth? No, I always have, she insisted. I was too shy to tell you before. That particular tidbit makes sense, he admitted gruffly. The constant blushing and pattern fainting spells when you knew I was around. But you certainly had a unique way of showing it. I've never said or done anything against you, she defended lamely. Never spited you, treated you unequally. That's true. He had been staring straight out in front of him the whole time, but now, he turned his gaze to her. How do you see me, Hinata? Do you see me as some warrior in shining armor? A noble person? No, I see you as someone I can aspire to be, someone I wish I could catch up to. It's your will in which I have always admired, and wished I could have one like yours. I wish to be someone who could be your equal so I could walk with you, sharing and caring for one another. To bolster one another's spirits when they're low, too. Pardon me, but let me stop you right there. Naruto interrupted. To be frank, that doesn't sound like love. It sounds like you look up to me as a role model. Nothing more. Then how would you describe love? She queried, now getting confused as doubt began creeping through her veins. Love is a singular even through which a pair has an arduous period in which they discover the need to be near one another, engaging in life with an endless amount of tenderness, affection, passion, fondness, devotedness, attachment, appreciation, benevolence. I do. For one another, he finished. Her heart fell as she realized that this was his way of telling her that he did not love her. She was about to collapse in tears when he grasped her shoulder as if in reassurance. Hinata. Tears had already started forming, but she didn't wipe them away. He pitied that look, and wondered how life would play out if he did end up with her. I'm not trying to break your heart. Instead, I'm merely trying to break your fantasy. It's not a fantasy, she shouted. It is, he replied firmly. You're clinging to the hope that we could be a couple, even now as we speak. You need to drop this impetu. So you're telling me to give up? She retorted emotionally. You just admitted to what I just said, he said in monotone. But regardless, I'm not telling you to give up. I'm saying to redirect your love in another fashion. According to what you said, you have no yearning for intimacy. You only desire to be my equal, however low I may be. Before she could confront him on that, he continued. We could still be as such. As friends, or close friends, if you prefer. I'm sure that if it weren't for my being a sage, I would most certainly make an effort to return your feelings. He felt like kicking himself for saying that, as he recalled what happened the previous evening. He had slipped up, then. He would make an effort to do so no longer. Sage. That title sounded rather important. What does being a sage have to do with your emotions? To be straightforward, one of the requirements is that I have to kill my emotions to be completely impartial and balanced as a whole. I cannot and must not hate, and I cannot and must not love. I'm sorry. And then, in Hinata's mind, she despised the idea of sages. That was quite understandable, and it did explain how he seemed to be so blunt and cold. Not cold, but he was just, not warm, if she had to put it that way. Like he had gone from being sunny weather to being gray skies. She had no idea how right on the mark she was. He got up, and she did as well, finally wiping away her sorrow liquid on her face using one sleeved arm as she ran it over. I understand, Naruto-kun. But do you have to be a sage for life? I'm under oath to be, he said simply. But friends, perhaps next time when you see me, you'll join me, and not hide behind some obstacle while using your Byakugan to watch me. She blushed heavily in embarrassment. Hanyo, I'm joking, he said in the same monotone. I suppose that you can't tell from my current tone. But as you can see, I'm no good for you. As you are now, you could have anyone you wanted in the village. Why waste it on me? You're worth it, she responded matter-of-factly. I wish, he answered succinctly. Perhaps later he would regret those words, but for now, at least she wasn't having an emotional breakdown. That, he was grateful for as she followed him to the gates so he could leave. X equals X equals. So how did your day go? Fine, sure. She felt like tearing out her hair. What's up with the attitude, huh? Do I offend? He asked blandly in his becoming disturbingly familiar monotone. No, she confessed. But it's like you're bipolar or something. What's up with that? I'm a sage. This is how I'm supposed to carry myself. It had been a trying day, one in which Matsuri had discovered why she never opted to par with Lee, chat with Ino, laze with Shikamaru, count insects like Shino, learn to speak, dog, with Kiba, throw weapons all around with Tenten and stare at everyone as if they're crazy like Neji. To be delicate, Naruto had some very colorful associates. She even heard there was another who was supposed to be there, but he ate like a horse. In fact, never mind the horse. That was an insult to horses which were on smaller diets than he. And while they were colorful, her host who sat in the kitchen reading a scroll seemed to be the exact opposite. She had to wonder where the excitable youth went. It's like he acted weird in one evening, and resolved to be like how she heard Gaara used to be. Wait, Gaara, don't I usually say, Lord Casecage? Well, if that's the case, sages must be boring, she said carelessly. Where's the guy who was all about being crazy and fun and abnormal, huh? Just one day, and I already miss his goofy side. Perhaps you should attend a social event in Commerce, he suggested. Seeing as my company is too tasteless for your standards, just be sure to lock the gate behind you. We wouldn't want a repeat of this morning. She huffed to herself. Fine. Without further ado, she retreated to the living room where she drew on her sandals and stepped out, closing the door behind her. She inhaled deeply the scent of the jasmine, before striding confidently to the gate. The gate was quite a distance from the main house where they resided, around 130 to 50 meters. She thought nothing of the distance, but kept glancing back to see if he would run to come tell her it was all some big joke. She briefly wondered why she would even entertain the notion, but she soon ignored it. At least Ino had told her that there was a social tonight being put on at the Nara compound, and she might as well go check it out. If not for the social, but to see where Tamari had stayed, in comparison to Naruto's place. Ah, there it goes again, she mumbled heatedly with a groan. She grasped the large bolt and unchambered it from the hold to open the gate. As soon as the gate was opened, she felt her wind knocked out of her as she was tackled head-on in the stomach. Oof! She landed on the ground flat on her back, and immediately pulled out a kunai from a holster she kept on her hip. She barely had it up in time to block her assaulter's own and sparks gashed. In the brief clash, the sparks lit up their locality, and she saw Asuna Hitai on the woman's forehead. What the? She kicked up to throw the person off, but failed miserably as the person gripped their kunai to stab her in the neck, while grabbing her kunai arm by the wrist. In the sense of better sacrifice, she raised her hand to stop it, but she wasn't entirely prepared for the feeling of steel to slice into the flesh of her palm as she held on to the bladed portion to avoid having a new wave of breath through her throat. Gah! The attacker growled in anger as they wrenched her wrist to get rid of the kunai in her right hand. She held on, although she could feel the wrists in her bone crack. This person was exceedingly strong. Strong. Naruto. She yelled at the top of her lungs. Help. The offender grunted as they pulled the kunai they had in her palm in a sawing motion to get her to let go. She gritted though agonizing pain as the razor-edged ninja tool cut her hand to the bone and blood dripped freely onto her face and eyes like an absolute nightmare. But in her ebbing resolve to keep hanging to the knife, her hand slipped closer to the hilt which exposed the point. The attacker pressed on with this advantage unto her throat. Just as she watched helplessly as her life was about to be snuffed out, the woman was pulled off of her, even as she was yelling to kill Matsuri. The voice was familiar, but soon the voice turned to that of high-pitched screaming. She quickly leaned herself up on her good hand and watched with wide eyes as someone held up the struggling and screaming woman by the back of the head in one hand. Her savior was standing behind her potential killer as she was hoisted up by a right hand. The woman screamed for an agonizing 5 seconds before her head exploded in a shower of gory blood and brain matter, just as Matsuri turned away. When she turned back fearfully to look again at the development, she saw the blue chakra sphere of a Rasengan sitting in the hand of her savior, and illuminated the blood-spattered form of Naruto, a grim look on his face. The Rasengan soon flickered out, but her mind continued to paint his bloodied image in her mind. Are you alright? Better. I can't feel a thing. That's good to hear, Shizune answered with a relieved smile. Now then. Naruto. What were you thinking? Tsunade yelled the question. I wasn't, he answered blandly. I acted on base instinct, and as much as it appalls me to say this, he looked up and stared at the Hokage with amber eyes. I don't regret any of it. If I do, it's most likely my late arrival to stop Matsuri's bodily harm. That sounds a tad personal. Why? The Suna Kunoichi asked herself. Even the Hokage asked this question aloud, and the Uzu Namikaze answered it, albeit unsurely. Perhaps it's because it happened on my property. She's supposed to be safe in the reputedly most secure place in the village, even more so than your own home, Hokage-sama. The fact that they breached my home to harm my guest was reason enough. It was a travesty. That's true, Tsunade admitted. Sounds plausible, but forming a Rasengan inside the head was brutish, unnecessary and inefficient, even if it were the only option. Not only will we never know the woman's identity, but a kunai could have gotten the job done for a kill, or just simply knocking her out. Why go so far? Just retribution, Shizune muttered to herself, but only Matsuri heard given by her proximity. Naruto's getting awfully overprotective of Matsuri. First he threatens Tsunade-sama and her guards, and now he goes too far just to save Matsuri. Overprotective of me, Matsuri. Tsunade announced her name, startling the brunette out of her thoughts. Hi. Kakashi already filled me in on the situation in Suna, and why you're the ambassador here. But before we get to that, are you sure you didn't recognize the person? No, it was too dark. Would you be able to recognize her in a picture? We need to notify Gaara, and I'm not about to just tell him that you got attacked. The end. Incompetence. Naruto, shut your damn pontificating. This is mostly your fault. For the love of Kami, you blew up the woman's head. If you had just taken the time to analyze the situation while Matsuri was seconds away from perishing. Tsunade groaned while slapping her forehead in exasperation. Naruto, you're impossible. Get lost. The Uzu Namikaze merely nodded once before he left in a body flicker out the window, leaving the Hokage baffled that he had actually listened. And it was Hokage-sama this or Hokage-sama that. Where did this Naruto come from? Shizune. No drinking on the job, ma'am. You're impossible too. I need to get Naruto distracted. Tsunade hemmed and hawed, wondering what she could do. Perhaps give him a mission to do. Matsuri suggested. That could work, Kato agreed. He always throws himself into anything he does. But Matsuri, did you do anything to him to make him act the way we're seeing? No, I didn't do anything, I swear. Nothing. Tsunade asked dangerously. He's acting strangely. I need to send a message to Jiraiya. Find out what the hell's wrong with him, if this is related to him being a sage. In the meantime, if Naruto were to leave on mission, are you sure you can manage to be in that house alone? I'm the only one who can actually set foot on the compound or even walk about freely on it besides Naruto without the risks of dying. Matsuri assured. No one else can and will come in to do anything, so long as they don't lay wait for me at the gate. I never understood how that worked, Shizune complained. Other people can't even touch the gate without dying, or even jump over. How come it allows you to go over there? I'd like to see it. I don't think it's my place to say how and why. The Suna ninja protested. Besides, I'm sure that if everyone and anyone were meant to know, he'd tell them himself. Then what makes you so special? Tsunade asked with narrowed eyes. She had to admit that she felt a bit jealous. Didn't Naruto trust her to allow her passage as well? Me? Special? I dunno. I have to admit, Naruto's a bit of a pity case, but I'm his friend if that counts for anything. The two medic nin shared a look while nodding. I see, the Senju answered with a nod. I don't think Naruto's going to leave without you on the mission. Since you're an ambassador, you have to stay put, like an envoy is supposed to. Are you saying he wouldn't leave me behind? Then what am I supposed to do? For starters, I don't think I approve of Naruto's state. If you even have an inkling of an idea as to change him back, I'd appreciate it. Tsunade mumbled. Hell, maybe the way he's acting now the reason why Jiraiya always insisted that his reasons of not completing sage training were personal. I always thought it was an inability. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but if I'm right, then Naruto will have to stay as is for the time being. Tsunade-sama, if Naruto-kun is acting more maturely and reserved, isn't this a good thing? Shizune piped up in a suggestion. Her mentor merely turned to her stiffly with a raised eyebrow as if to say, really? The raven-haired woman then nodded unsurely, making the Hokage sigh. Shizune, to be frank, currently, only his looks alone and not his attitude reminds me of Nawaki. It's disturbing. Disturbing indeed. X equals X equals. The Kyuubi howled and thrashed against the seal of the gates, but it failed to budge a single inch. What went wrong? It was getting loose. Now it's secure. The beast finally stopped before settling on its hind legs, pausing to gather all of its rationality. It was getting weaker up until he recalled his blasted teacher's literature. Or was it after? He somehow changed his mentality during the night to resist and repress all forms of emotion. He's regained control. That was a word he truly despised. If he remains like this, I may never escape this torment. It wasn't as if he had anywhere to be, anywhere to go before a deadline. He had nowhere to go, but it was the principle of the matter. A jailed man would even trek through the most expansive desert without water or provisions by crawling if it meant being free. The nine-tailed kitsune felt the same way. But then, its container had unconsciously strengthened the seal. Kyuubi needed to influence him somehow to get him to release it. He had a vast knowledge of how the Naruto's body worked. Emotions, physicality, hormones, all he needed to do was to find a way to exploit a crack such as one of these, make the boy excessively emotional, and he'd soon be destroying a path to get to wherever the hell he wanted to go. Go where he wanted. Go where. It didn't matter. That Suna girl with him. He suppressed my influence by using memories of her upon which to meditate. He bonded with her in some manner, controlling the seal with varying emotions. But by pushing her away somewhat in his current state of mind, he regained control. By behaving like his typical numbskull tendencies, it gradually weakened. A wide and rather sinister toothy grin came to be on the demon fox's maw, reminding one first and foremost that it was a predator initially. Yes. That's the answer. All that is required is a little seed of uncertainty. That's all I need to escape this keep. X equals X equals, 1 week later. Matsuri groaned as she saw him wearing the black cloak yet again. Damn, have you ever taken that thing off to wash it? I have, he stated evenly. I do it every night before going to bed. Matsuri shook her head slowly to indicate disapproval. You need more variety in your wardrobe. My predominant battle clothing color used to instill is orange. You should be grateful for seeing me in black. If only Gaara could see him now, she thought absently, not even realizing this time that she had once again failed to administer the honorary suffix or to use his title. That may be true, but I couldn't care less. We're going out to get something to eat. Why? The question was asked with unadulterated curiosity and certainly didn't feel suitable for his current general vibe. We've been in the house for too long, she answered quickly. You can go somewhere in the morrows. You've been in the house for too long. I can go somewhere in the morning. The conversation was rapidly turning into an argument of sorts with rapid-fire responses and jabs. Don't you want to eat something that you haven't had to slave to cook for? I can use shadow clones. They're extensions of you and they don't want to do it. How do you know that I don't want to cook, thereby coming to the conclusion that they don't want to? Because I know you, she half yelled in exasperation. You don't want to cook. Naruto grumbled with a scowl. Lucky guess. What does she mean? Know me. She knows some of my character traits, and not much else past that. But then again, my life hasn't that much to offer by means of detail. Well, you can cook something. I don't want to. She answered in deadpan, as if she had rehearsed it. In fact, she had practiced this whole conversation in her head and had an endgame in mind. She hadn't forgotten what she was setting out to do, that is, get her Naruto back. Where the hell did that come from? She asked herself unsurely. I mean, make Naruto go back to normal. Well, you can go by yourself. He folded his arms with a slightly cross look on his face. Unsafe. Unsafe. What the hell? Unsafe. He stared at her momentarily. If she were on her own, then she could be vulnerable to any other potential assassins that lurked outside the compound. You don't want to cook. I don't want to cook, so we can both just go. I'll come, he jutted in, interrupting her line of speech. Matsuri was pleasantly surprised to see him give in to her wishes so quickly after being set so staunchly against it. She had believed that she would have had to sell the idea, but it didn't appear necessary after all. She didn't read too much into it, she had work to do. Well, let's go then. X equals X equals. So just to be clear, to be a sage means that you have to be completely balanced. No loving and no hating. That's right. That sucks with a capital F, for Fu. Yeah, a lot of people share your view. He answered abruptly. But one can't deny that it's a necessary evil to be one of my stature. Are you godlike? Of course not. Then what's the use? She asked adamantly. It's just a big waste if you're not the strongest alive. I could take Tsunade on with Sage Mode and pull off a win. He answered in the same tone. She stroked her head and thought, still not good enough. 2 cages at the same time. But just barely. That sounds like a protest. Now we're cooking with gas. Still not good enough. No emotion. Still sucks to be you. Naruto inhaled deeply before exhaling and used wind in like fashion. I had no one to love me, or me to love them. That wasn't the same for hate, as almost I knew hated me. It was a win-win for me. No one to love and everybody to hate. The village should count itself lucky that I gave up my hate. As his voice droned in the background, Matsuri couldn't help but grin to herself. He was complaining, which was sort of a half emotion called right. Also, him complaining as much as he was currently might be working as even his vocabulary was regressing somewhat. If one thing was sure, she knew that he wouldn't say, lucky, or say, win-win. Rather, he would have said something along the lines of, fortunate, or, all beneficial. You had someone to love you. What about Hinata? I think her name was. It'd be prudent of you to cease and desist in that claim. Damn, he was cracking. What did he say to her? Is he over that already? Matsuri asked herself and thought worriedly as she half bit a finger in nervousness, hoping that she didn't just kill all of her progress. I need to try another angle. We're here. Naruto stopped and looked up to see that they were in front of Ichiraku's ramen stand. I should have known that. That what? If you could out-eat everyone else's patronage put together, it means that you love their food beyond the extreme. Come on. She grabbed his hand at the wrist, trying to create familiarity from his previous gags. The reference was lost on him as she tried to pull him unsuccessfully as he didn't budge an inch. Perhaps if she could ever have the strength to overpower his Sage Mode to drag him, he would have realized. Sadly, both cases weren't to be. Come inside, you damn statue. With a near unnoticeable shrug, he walked in stiffly behind her and sat on a stool. After seeing him sit in it, she opted to sit on the stool next to him. His reaction was to attempt to get up and head over by one stool to create a bit more space between them, but she stopped him by apprehending him by the shoulder. Sure, Naruto could have easily resisted it, but he let it stop him. No, stay. Am I an animal at your beck and call? He scoffed. Sorry. And that's a loss of temper, I guess. She mentally fist-pumped and pressed on. Order you favorite. I'll pay. No, it's fine. It's on me. Fantastic. She smirked at seeing him redden in the face at the simple reverse psychological trap and believed that she could be able to change Naruto back to normal. There were quite a few morality issues that ran through her mind at this time. 1. Why was she trying to change someone's mentality simply because it didn't sit right with her? 1. Who's to say that his previous state was the abnormal one and all she was doing currently was pro-anti-normal? This is wrong, Matsuri whispered. But I don't care. The lowly audible speech made its way into Naruto's ear, making him perk up trying to think of what she meant. Naruto, you're a goddamn hypocrite. Excuse me, you feel nothing for ramen. You feel nothing for your comrades. That's, he went interrupted once more. Konoha has just a place to live in by your standards. It's just where you live, not a place you fought to protect with your life, not the place you wanted to become Hokage, it's just a location on a map. She uttered in an insistent voice and gave him no room to speak no more than a syllable of breaking speech. You don't care for anywhere, anything or anyone. I care about you. The moment would have been a bit awkward had it not been for the fact that Matsuri picked up right where he left off. I care about you too. But right now, you're kinda acting like an insufferable bastard who thinks he's better than everyone else. I never had the notion. You never said you hadn't. She continued in a serious tone. It's like if you see someone wearing a dress you automatically assume that it's a girl. The person never said they were a guy, so what were you to think? It's the same way with you. I have to be a sage. It's my duty, my responsibility, my curse, she interjected eagerly. Because for all that power, you don't even like it or approve of it. He clenched the bridge of his nose with the fingers of his right hand while gazing intently at his companion. Iname and Chuki were nowhere to be seen, but it was easy to say that they would be in the back listening. That's true. Then why would you? Personal reasons. Fair enough, she conceded with a groan. But you obviously still feel emotion and all that, why would you act that way? It wasn't an act, he responded eerily. He let his constant sage mode ebb away, gradually losing the facial visual characteristics. It was then that Matsuri had never been so relieved to see blue eyes. She'd never take him for granted again. She finished writing the report to send to the case cage and rolled it up before using the special seal that was given to her to secure it, ready for delivery. The whole process was confusing to her, not the actual documentation, but her actual motions and emotions were a tad conflicting. It hadn't even been 3 months properly now, and Matsuri considered all that had transpired during her period of fellowship with the Uzu Namikaze. She knew that she didn't love him. What frightened her was that it was possible she was in the mid-process. She hadn't really considered Gaara. She meant Lord Casecage Gaara, in a long time, nor did she really feel the need to try and put on a show or flair or have a need to impress in her letter. Instead, she was being pestered by a certain blonde who kept absently pulling on her to follow him. She somewhat allowed him to do it while pretending not to. It was the usual, "Didn't I tell you to stop calling me dear?" Or, "Quit yanking on my arm." She loved the attention, she actually appreciated its presence. And Naruto even more. Am I falling for him? That's not a bad prospect, actually. But I can't really allow myself to go through with it. I mean, what about Gaara? She slipped up again. She mentally slapped herself. Nah, maybe it's a sign. It probably signifies that I'm not in love with Gaara as I first thought. Well, there I go again. I keep forgetting to use his honorary suffix in his title. I think that's a case all for itself. It's not that I'm forgetting him, but Naruto keeps reminding me that all I've done was just to impress him, not to mention that I was basically putting myself up for show for him. Now quite like that, but all the things I've done to get his attention. Matsuri considered all the times in Suna in which she had worn some sort of provocative clothing from time to time, nothing too questionable, mind you, and the perfumes that ate her paychecks as well as acting like nothing more than a teacher's pet or even worse, some breed of Suna fangirl. Well, that's not too much of a shock, now that she thought about it. She needed to start bettering herself. She was a kunoichi, for crying out loud. She got attacked trying to leave a place of security and nearly got killed. If Naruto hadn't been there, well, it was hard to imagine Naruto not being there. He was always there. At first, she thought he was being clingy, but now she realized that he was just being him, if that made any sense. Kinda goofy, kinda good looking, kinda considerate, kinda affectionate, kinda sweet, kinda, well, kinda. And the list went on and on and on. Perhaps she was hit harder than she thought. It was a fight all by itself not to love him. As attention-grabbing as he was most of the time, perhaps that in and of itself was the reason. By being the only male around for so much of her time, she naturally gravitated to him. She could wish that was the case, but no one else in her village or in the leaf had caught her eye, and she was sure she hadn't caught theirs. She wasn't all that special, by ways of attractiveness like having extremely defined body contours, big assets, breast size, 1. In fact, Atetsu had once told her that she was very plain looking. It didn't hurt her all that much. In fact, she herself thought it to be true and was in reluctant agreement. Hence why she had to spruce herself up, so to speak. She had always been ignored in that same sense, in favor of the more attractive girls of her village. Being ignored wasn't a pleasant factor, and one she and Naruto could relate to. How deep-seated was her relationship to her host, she had no idea. In any case, she was only a friend. Besides, she hadn't fully come to terms that she might be infatuated with him, and even if she did, it'd never work. Instead of it being some predictable story of a beauty and a beast, it was rather another story of boring, plain and the handsome demon. She had nothing to offer and he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the son of Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, one of the remains of the Uzumaki bloodline clan, and not to mention the last but not least, a sage. She had had a lot of time to read a few books about the particular mode titled during when Naruto was in his phase of being in said state. To be a sage would be, yes, a powerful person, both by leadership and might, but also to be a person of having, well, all that Naruto had described himself to be. He hadn't lied, he hadn't faked, he hadn't bluffed. When he had first started out acting the way he was completely genuine. By the end of a total of 8 days, he was trying to keep up an effort to remain as such, but by then it had become something of a facade, one that she took pleasure of knowing she broke. Who's to say that he wouldn't fall back in such a state? What if it were chronic? It had happened again. It lasted for 48 hours. It happened again 2 weeks later. It lasted for 2 hours. It happened again in 10 days. It lasted for 3 damn weeks. By then, she had grown somewhat attention-starved and had to do some things, certain kinds of things. Not nasty things, questionable things or bad things. Well, they were for a good cause, so it was a good thing, right? Not entirely. If he had a responsibility of a sage, didn't it make her a bad person by corrupting him to have emotions? Wasn't it also a bad thing because causing him to have emotions was to assuage her own selfish needs? Matsuri no longer had herself to consider. Yes, she was well off, being in a fancy house, not having to worry about food, fancy meals or guaranteed money. I'm a friend, not a gold digger, Matsuri told herself fiercely as she gazed through the window of the garden. He offered me this place, I never asked for it. She certainly didn't refuse it. She was therefore a sort of victim to her own argument of not saying what one meant, or they'll be assumptions. She was so confused. She was just a plain, orphan girl who used to have a crush on the case cage and just came to terms about having a growing one on a new person, or it's that he was just growing on her, she couldn't really tell. These were new waters for her. A person who was basically everything she was not. As previously thought and still unchanged, he had status, class, money, charisma, power and basically a fun-loving guy. His reoccurring bouts of being a full sage weren't a blemish, rather, they were just a growing part of who he was. If she couldn't accept that part of him, who was he to accept any part of who she was? Matsuri moved away from the window to cease her admiring of the garden. They were just reminding her that she was merely a huge rock with some slight refinements. Equals X equals X equals. Naruto wondered how the girl seemed so withdrawn. He missed her trying to get him to leave the house mansion, to go out and well, socialize, for lack of a better word. She became rather lackadaisical and it couldn't be healthy. Well, not mentally. She was in rather terrific physical shape but she could use some improvement. Naruto had an idea. Oi Matsuri, wanna train with me? Nah, I'm busy. Maybe next time. Wanna train with me? Just because you ask me again doesn't mean that. This is the next time, he insisted. It's the follow-up in a series, therefore, it's the next time. He was slightly pleased to see her smile a bit, but it fell when she responded by saying that her answer was a maybe, the first time. It could be a no, she explained. Are you trying to use psychology on me? I beat the Hyuga clan head with parapsychology. Don't get confident in what you did the first time, the blonde answered with a self-satisfied smirk. Besides, if you don't come, I'll drag you to training. Even if you did, nothing guarantees that I'd stay, or even do anything if I did. Yuzu Namikaze frowned deeply, making the girl fret a bit. Is that so? Yeah. Her voice wavered a bit, wondering what he was up to. I'm going to remove your name out of the registry. He deadpanned before walking away from where she lied back down on her bed with the pillow on her face. At first, she was like, who cares, but that was before her heart leapt into her throat, suddenly feeling exceedingly worried and heaved the pillow off of her face. Registry. The blood registry. No. She practically saw bright lights swimming in her vision as she worried. Oh no, oh no no no. She was out of her bed like a bullet in the door in similar fashion. Slamming her bedroom door closed, she sprinted through the upper levels of the house to the living room where all the rooms converged. And where the main exit was. She was at the upper banister when she saw him in the living room below, walking purposefully to the door. In her panic, she swung her legs over the barricade, pushed off and allowed herself to fall to the ground, landing perfectly on the balls of her feet. He had just barely turned around to acknowledge the sound when she dived over the couch and tackled him at the waist, knocking his air out of him. His next response was that to throw her off through the space of the back of the couch, the darn thing flipping it over her like a lid as he got back to his feet, dusting himself off dramatically. Tisk tisk. The couch was thrown aside and Naruto found himself with the rope of a jovio hooked around his right ankle and pulled savagely, drawing blood and tipping him onto his backside before the jovio was retracted by a smug Kunoichi who hid behind the couch. Naruto growled in frustration and leapt to his feet and hefted the couch and throwing it aside, revealing her location. She was immediately the victim of a daitapo that took her off of the ground and drew her flat against the far wall where she struck her head rather painfully. Matsuri ignored the crushing externally caused headache in favor of advancing after the retreating blonde. He had just opened the door towards him when she kicked it closed with a thrusting stomp kick. She barely took note of the fact that they were barefooted as she promptly threw a punch to his neck but he knocked it away with a chop. In the same moment, he hooked the crook of his foot around her standing one and pulled it towards her, pushing her away from him with his other hand. Smack dead center of her cleavage. She didn't take notice of it right away as she went with force of his push and rolled backwards over her back and the lateral side of her arm and stood again in one smooth motion. He was now undeterred on his way out the door, but to anyone who was on the outside looking in, they would have seen a hand that grasped him by the collar and yanked him back inside. After that, the sounds of grunts became plainly audible. The house actually shook as tremors were obvious to feel even in the ground. A lengthy silence reigned before it was broken by the girl in the house screaming, and the man was yelling in effort, and then, and then, Naruto crashed through a window upstairs with a crash and shattering of broken glass as it was apparent he had gone through while it was still closed. His upper torso was completely shirtless and as a result his chest and gut suffered cuts from the glass. His face had been saved by the sacrifice of his arms, which while they bled badly, they were rapidly healing. Matsuri herself at the broken window and leapt out after him, landing unsteadily but still managed to execute a flawless roll to negate falling impact. Naruto, are you crazy? No, came the cool response. I'm taking initiative so you can stop taking life for granted. And then he was off again. She sprinted after the blonde who took off in the direction of the registry building and could only feel the creeping horror of realizing the truth again, that his speed far eclipsed hers. She needed to do something radical to slow him down, not quite like trying to grab at him and only ended up with his shirt being practically ripped off. How she managed to capture that trophy, she had no idea. And the distance between them wasn't necessarily closing, but the one between them and the registry building was, so. She unraveled her jovio from around her fist where she had woven it and hurled it a foot or two off to his left. As soon as the dark portion of the weapon had passed him, she tugged on it fiercely to the right, allowing it cut off his progress at the waist as a sort of tripwire. However, while it swung around him, She had a split second to decide where she wanted the spear end to go as it swung around her. 1. Either to continue to try tying him up, or to allow the dart to pierce his flesh and be liable to hurt him in some woebegone area. The particular area just so happened to be the base of the spine and was certain to stop him, or even kill him if that so much as. Time slowed as the window of opportunity was about to pass her. However, the thought of her actually being responsible of hurting him horribly or even killing him made her sick to her stomach. And yet, the dart made its way into the forbidden area. In a whirling blur of events, she found herself standing beside his bed in the hospital, staring down at the still body that lay there. Thankfully, it wasn't his corpse, but his, thankful, the correct phrase to coin the situation. He was paralyzed from the waist down, and she just stood there watching him stare at her with his magnificent bruise while the Hokage herself was yelling at her. Shizune frowning like a thunderstorm, friends and comrades outside the door clamoring for her head and other such little things fading into the background. Tears welled up in her eyes in regret as her eyes scanned his form that lay there pitifully. The very person who boasted that he could take on a cage and pull off a limb had lost the ability of locomotion. He'd be in a wheelchair or bed permanently and waste away for life. Thankful, as if, Naruto, she was cut off by his wheezing response. It's fine. But, it's fine. Besides, he raised his right arm in an effort to show off prowess. I can still arm wrestle you and win. That's something, right? I can beat the strongest girl I know at something. Tears ran heavily now, distorting her vision and making everything appear like a runny watercolor painting. I'm not supposed to try and hurt the person I love. You loathe him. The voice of Tsunade chimed in again at full volume. It was all that occupied her hearing, and it was at that point she felt something reminiscent of an earthquake. In her forehead, her soul sallied forth out of her flesh into an abyss of black that twisted and churned with her at the focal point, doing all it could to destroy her infinitesimally. It was succeeding, and as she felt herself being ripped apart, her head descended below the surface of the dark essence. She could barely gurgle the words. Love. I meant, love. And with that, she started awake in her bed. In her woes, she had tangled herself up in sheets that hadn't been strewn across the ground at the foot of her bed. Picking off those that were still on her, she leaned her legs down and winced as she felt bruises here and there throughout her body. Sweat was also obvious to notice, as it covered her whole body in a perspiring sheet. She struggled to use her higher thought process to figure out what just transpired, but ended up being more and more confused the more and more she used it. She went through the motions mechanically, re-sheeting, spreading her bed, then taking a shower and other such actions of personal hygiene. Finally pulling on a bra with her merino and knee-length tights, she strolled into the kitchen, giving Naruto a start as he was staring at his hand intently and flexing the palm, as if he were recollecting a memory of grasping something. When he saw her presence, he sojourned the deed and hailed her a tad nervously. Mornin' Matsuri. Good morning, Naruto. She sat at the table, and as soon as she did, he had a plate of food in front of her. In the same breath, he was also seated beside her and his food dished up as well. Do you want to grace the food this morning? Nah, you do it. I'm kinda having a bit of an episode, came her curt and succinct reply. He obligated her, and shortly thereafter, he tried to pick up a conversation. Well, didn't know you'd take me so seriously. I only wanted you to train with me. At least I healed overnight, but I can still see some bruises on you. Yeah, you didn't take it easy on me. Bite food, chew, swallow. Chew, swallow. Well, I kinda expected you to try and rope me up in the end, but you nearly hogtied me. If I hadn't cut my way out, I think you would have left me out there still. She smiled at this, now remembering that she had chosen to tie him. Well, I wouldn't have. I guess you don't know me as well as I do you. He smiled too when he saw hers. You're the strongest girl I know. Does that count? That statement was a bit eerie. In a bit of a show, Matsuri pinched herself hard and still found herself eating breakfast. This left Naruto wondering why she did that. Was that for? Just making sure I wasn't dreaming. Oh boy, she shakily returned to her breakfast, slightly unsettling the rising good mood. Okay. He trailed off as he began staring at his hand again absently. She took notice of this and smirked a bit. Her. Who? Me? He quit immediately and blushed. No, ma'am. Well, it was good to know that he loved even one part of her. On second thought, make that two things. Well, after breakfast, help me clean and fix what we broke yesterday. Alright, Naruto-kun. Fantastic. He got up and went to the fridge to get himself a glass of orange juice. It was a good thing he hadn't started drinking it yet when he realized that she had just used a typically affectionate suffix, otherwise, he might have done a spit take. Wait, what? So, Naruto-kun, huh? She didn't even look up as she swept the glass into the dustpan. She kept her head and face angled straight, lest he see her slightly reddening face. Yeah, something wrong. He did a bit of a double take. No. It's just that, well. She could hear him rambling, but didn't put a stop to it. In fact, she was afraid to. Afraid that he didn't like it. Afraid that he didn't accept it. Afraid that he didn't accept her. What? You don't want me to use the suffix? She asked in a tone that was the polar opposite of how she was feeling. Matsuri could hardly believe how easy her voice came from rapture in her chest, but yet it seemed that her aloof-like tone was putting her host on edge, the very same whose home she was helping to clean, reasons being that it was night trash because of their rough and tumble the day before. Just recalling it brought the hint of a smile to her face, but from Naruto's perspective, it gave her a smug look and a bit coy. Sexy, even. Not that he'd admit it. The suffix is fine, he admitted. It's just that I didn't expect it, that's all. Why wouldn't you expect it from me? Her smile fell as did her countenance, and his emotions mirrored the action. In fact, it was starting to feel like he was being put on the spot for no good reason. He felt almost shameless for even questioning that. He even began to consider if he actually had a problem with her saying it, but instead, he had a problem with himself. He just couldn't lie to her. He decided to tell the truth. Just looking at Matsuri's face, that brawny face of hers, and her limpid eyes that came accompanied by stark eyelashes that highlighted an endearing face. It was the kind of face that could express any kind of emotion, any time. She had him fearing her. She had him fretting for her. She had him loving her. He sighed deeply. He had come to terms about that, having inkling that he might have developed a love interest in her, and that brought up a lot of confusion, and if there was one thing he hated, it was being confused. It made him feel weak, lesser of himself, like how he used to be when he was younger. On one hand, if he loved her, then it would be unfair to Hinata, who professed to have loved him for most of their lives. Pity she hadn't had the confidence to tell him before his training trip. Besides that, he wasn't allowed to love, due to his part of being a sage. That in itself wasn't fair. That is, for him to even fall in love, and when it happened, it was with the wrong girl. That raised a lot of questions on his end, and he was sure that not even he had all the answers. Hell, he wondered that, no, Jiraiya probably didn't even have a clue. Perhaps some higher being dictating who he should fall in love with. Hold on, wrong girl. Is it even fair of me to class Matsuri like that? He was sure that he had no right. As a matter of fact, as sure as night followed day. On the outside, Matsuri patiently waited for his answer, but on the inside, she feared what he would say. She had an idea what, but didn't quite know how to phrase it into words. HMPH. I guess I was right. He doesn't like me in that way. She turned to resume her task of cleaning, but as she turned, he grabbed her by the shoulder to halt her for a moment. Instead, she shrugged him off and left the room, leaving a befuddled young man behind with an unanswered question, and even more unasked. Comma, 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 what am I doing wrong? Did I do something? Is the problem me? Naruto finished the tidying of the entire household while Matsuri had left the property since that mid-morning. What am I doing? I'm just going through the motions. She's Matsuri, for Kami's sake. Why her? He didn't have a problem with, per se. What he meant to ask was, why me? He was a sage. He wasn't allowed to feel emotions. They hindered better judgment. To be impartial, almost like his father who sacrificed himself and his family in general, just to save the village. None of that, save your family or your village, type of crap that usually had people choosing family instead of hundreds and thousands of people they didn't know. That was what it meant to be a sage, to choose the greater good, rather than benefits for yourself. To be self-sacrificial for the benefit of others. He was a final authoritative figure who had final say, wielded great power, had all the financial backbone he'd ever need, and he had never quite felt so lonely. That's right, the Kyuubi said. Only I, for hate to be your one and only comforter. Naruto had no hesitation to cut the mental link, wasn't even amused when he felt the great Kitsune granting on the other end. It used to be ignored, but now, it's always Matsuri, 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 he muttered almost angrily. Life was just going on real easy and simple without her around. Just be Naruto plain Uzumaki, have 1,000 meals in his arm seals to pick from, wear his sage cloak whenever he wanted, just be a sage. But with her around, it was another kind of simple. He could temporarily forget his duties, act a kid again like he used to by doing free running from mobs, play a few pranks on Matsuri, that is, and basically, just enjoy life. He needed to break things down. 1. He hated being alone right now. 2. He appreciated her more just for being around, rather than having never met her. 3. He wasn't fully sure if he even wanted to continue being a sage anymore. 4. Matsuri was a real eye-opener, both literally and figuratively. 5. He loved the Suna Kunoichi, but was entertaining doubts that it might be a passing interest fad, or even worse, just an infatuation stemming from close interaction that was both voluntary and involuntary. The Yuzu Namikaze needed someone to talk to. Of course, Matsuri kept coming to mind, but he couldn't. After all, she was the topic. That'd be no good. Who was in the village he could talk to? He mentally ran through his memory banks and came up nil in his efforts. Well, there was one person who might read. Extremely slim chance be able to help him with some advice, but that was so far-fetched, he nearly kicked his own ass for even considering the idea. X=X=X=, early next morning. I'll be frank, I need to get out of the village for a little bit. Do you want something violent? Does it take place in Suna? If so, then yes. Tsunade shrugged. Alright, on one condition. What's that? The sage did not like where this might take him. I want a tour of that damn house. It must be really fancy for you to stay cooped up in there for so long. Naruto sighed. Fine. When I get back, I'll tour you around. But if the village is suddenly bawling for a Rokudan, it's not on my head. I'm a Hokage. The blonde woman grinned. I can take of myself. Naruto eyed the sake bottles that littered her table and sweat dropped. I never doubted that for a second. What's the mission? Your liver alone might be ready to give out, not just from the seals that could kill you. The Senju got up from around her table and perused around another adjacent table through some folders. I want this scroll personally hand-delivered to Cascade Gara of the Sand. I can trust you with that responsibility, can I? On the inside, the team was viewing cartwheels as a perfect opportunity to speak to the very person he needed to find, but on the outside, he remained nonchalant. Meh, I think I can handle it. X=X=, one senjutsu enhanced run later, late afternoon. Do you know how much security I had to go through just to get here? I mean, I'm supposed to be more renowned than that Arrow sensei of mine by now. I mastered senjutsu, for Kami's sake. It's just a precaution. My veto can only go so far. Now, why are you here, Naruto? Just playing the part of a postman, the Yuzu Namikaze answered. I think the Hokage wrote it out to you. He handed the scroll over to Gaara, and the red-haired page took it from in an easy manner using sand manipulation. Naruto scoffed a bit, muttering something about show-offs. Me, Gaara intoned. What about you? The last time you were here, you were boasting about how you can kill a man without even touching him using taijutsu. It's not as if I was lying, the fellow Jinchuriki replied eagerly. One time, Naruto, Gaara interrupted. Why are you here? You've always said that you hated being used as a messenger boy. The blonde sighed. That obvious, I want some advice. Please be frank. To be honest with you, Gaara began, what we're doing feels like we're in some sort of work of fiction that's beginning to feel watered down. It's starting to get boring. Work of fiction, Naruto queried. You're right. Fine, I'll just tell you. I think I might have fallen for Matsuri. The cage interrupted. I had a feeling. Besides, if you decided to just look over at the very premise, it was basically being advertised. Really? The Uzu Namikaze blurted with a surprised look. Well, damn, how does that make you feel? As much as I'm tempted to play the part of an aggressive elder brother, instead, I'll just say that it's between you and her, it's none of my business. Don't you have anything more deep-seated you can tell me, oh wise one? Naruto asked with a growing seat drop. You started talking like an old man a long time now, but I don't like talking to old men, just someone who's close to my age with the sagacity that comes with age. I haven't had the experience. How can I give advice on that? Have you forgotten that I used to kill people just because they were probably thinking I was mental? Doesn't that mean that you were, I sense, watering down, because of a topic that's irrelevant to what the whole thing is about? The Wind Shadow reminded. Naruto merely sighed. Whatever. So I'm infatuated with her. So what happens now, You should tell her. Naruto chuckled bitterly. I botched that. While not to full-blown proportions you might see or read of elsewhere, I basically had a problem with her using an affectionate suffix with my name. Sounds like you do. I don't, the sage exclaimed. It's actually me not being able to call her that. Gaara nodded his head slowly as if he understood. This went on for a while until Naruto shook his head. You don't have a clue why, do you? Not even one. I'm a sage. That's why. You don't act like one, Gaara said pointedly. I know. But I have to. It's like I'm a criminal. Every time I continue to make a transgression, I just make things worse and worse and worse. You can get away with small things, but all of that just crops up until one day you're on trial. What's the penalty? Now that I'm a sage, I have to keep my emotions in check or the coyote can escape. Don't ask why. It's a bit of a secret that not even the person dictating our lives can divulge. Whatever his name is. Kami, Gaara asked unsurely. Don't think so. If he were, he'd be able to. Naruto shivered. I'd hate to think about it. But enough of that. What do I do? Privy to his own thoughts, the redhead thought that perhaps that he really should threaten Naruto after all. He soon decided against it, believing that it would be too predictable. So you like her enough to the point of infatuation. I did call it that, because I don't want to go as far as to call it love, Naruto interjected. What kind of synonym can I use? Gaara held up his hand. So you're fond of her. Good one. I am. You see no one else in that fashion. No. Gaara found a distraction in unraveling the scroll to begin reading it. He betrayed no emotion as he read it. Naruto wouldn't have an idea as to what it was saying even if he had been making an effort to. It was silent as the two Jinchuriki sat quietly, both lost in thought, that is, until the more talkative of the two broke it. Well, what am I going to do? Tell her that you love. Too strong. Naruto cut across resolutely. Gaara replied with a small smirk. Too strong a word. Tell her that you're keen on her. It's true, isn't it? It is. And after I tell her that, what next? Perhaps you should find out about how she feels about you first, before you talk to her about this. Gaara monotone as he kept on reading. If she sees you as a friend, close friend, Kami forbid, a brother. That's how Tamari Nichan gets rid of her suitors besides Shikamaru. She calls them brotherly. She doesn't really mean it, but it gets the job done. Lets them down without any hope of actually trying again in an effort to succeed. Quote. Naruto looked glum for a second, and Gaara took it as a sign that he had started to fret that this was a potential circumstance. Or a close friend. I'm sure you've pissed her off on multiple occasions. How did she react? If she was scolding, you're in trouble. Nah, she never scolded. She was cool. In fact, she's a lot like me. Naruto grinned widely at this, but Gaara could only shake his head. That she is. You two were made for each other, even considering that you both are denizens of two different nations, distant from each other. I wonder who the hell could have thought of that pairing. Kami. Perhaps a member of Kami's court requested it. Gaara chuckled uncharacteristically before clearing his throat. In any case, you're going to tell her, and what if she doesn't feel that way? Naruto got out of his seat so quickly that the crook behind his knee sent the chair flying to the far wall where it smashed into pieces. Gaara wasn't even nonplussed, but guards came in to check up on them. Naruto was still in his moment, but the wind shadow waved them back out again. I can't believe that I'm entertaining this. I'm a sage, for Kami's sake. Naruto yelled. I gotta. Where the hell's my black cloak? I gotta meditate. Naruto, get a grip on yourself. Black cloak, has this been going on a long time? Months now. Gaara raised his eyebrow. How many? It started 8 months ago. Has she been in Konoha with him that long? Quote. Naruto gazed at his friend. Come to think of it, have you sorted out your council yet? It's been long enough, hasn't it? I've dealt with all of them 2 months ago. To be honest, it slipped my mind to let Matsuri know she can come back home. In fact, Gaara held out the scroll he had been reading. This letter is actually from her. It was in fact this letter that reminded me. Naruto took the letter from him and began speed reading it. After completing it, he read through twice more slowly. She's coming back to Suna. She. Hi. Gaara answered. So you're going to have to tell her. She apparently wants to come back home. The blonde's face fell when he heard that. To Gaara, it almost looked as if Naruto wanted to cry or something of the like, but thankfully, it didn't come to that. I want to tell her. But I can't. I have to forget about her. I don't know what to do. I want to tell her of my feelings, but as a sage, I'm not even supposed to even have feelings for her. It seems you have an ultimatum. Huh, why does that feel like a reference? Gaara became puzzled, but he shook it off. You'll have to choose. On one hand, power, influence, wisdom and charisma is offered, even to the extent of being eligible for Hokage, but no emotions, especially one you've sought after in others for you, particularly Matsuri. On the other hand, you lose all the things afforded with sagacity, for a chance that she may become your significant other, may lose eligibility to become Hokage, and most likely accidentally release your tailed beast in the compromise. Thanks for making it simple for anyone to understand the stakes, Naruto mumbled. It's a tough one, and I can't even say, I'll sleep on it, or, I'll meditate, because either will influence my decision to either way. I need time. Gaara perked up somewhat. Perhaps I could tell her that she can return in a month. Not nearly enough, but it will have to do, the Uzu Namikaze mumbled. I don't know what to do. Well, I'll write a return letter. Will you tell her how I feel? Of course not, Gaara retorted in his quiet way. Just to tell her that she may return in a month, using the excuse that she can use it to get herself in order. Thanks a lot, Gaara. He came closer and shook his fellow Jinchuriken's hand. I can't thank you enough. Pay for the chair you broke. The blonde stared at the redhead dumbly before the case cage continued. That was a joke. Oh, cuz I know you have the coin to get many more and all. Still, I wonder why Matsuri wants to leave. She's the one who suggested it. Yes, maybe she's trying to get away from you. Really? Naruto looked so hurt that Gaara hurried to amend his gap. That was a joke, Naruto, the other tried to play it off. Naruto put on a show as if he found it funny, but Gaara could tell that the remark had hurt him, and in all actuality, was the case Cage thinking him out. Without further ado, he told Naruto to go walk a bit while he wrote the letter. He wrote the letter telling her when to return, among other things. Naruto handed Matsuri the letter. Here you go, Matsuri. Express delivery. She snatched the letter from his lingering hand, raising a stink eye at the same time. Did you try to read this? No, I didn't have to. Gaara did tell me what he was going to write. After all, he said the last in his thoughts. Oh, immediately, she felt miserable. It felt like she was trying to find fault with him, trying to find a reason why she would want to leave. But there was none. So here she was, trying to find fault in a guy she had reason to believe that didn't have any, a reason to give Gaara why she wanted to come home. But she loved it here. She loved having to share a household with a guy like Naruto. She loved being in a village that had perfect weather. She loved having girlfriends, like Sakura and Ino and even Hinata to talk to, although the last took some time before she came around to the idea. Homesick for home, as she claimed in her letter. Not in the least. Perhaps a visit to Suna 2 or 3 times a year would be fine, but that was it. She wouldn't mind staying in Konoha. She wouldn't mind staying with him. But he had no room for her. Not in his house, for he had plenty of that and was willing to share. But not where it mattered. Not in his heart. Matsuri. Naruto studied the girl who stood before him. She was a quarter foot shorter than him, but even the bit of diminutiveness made her shrink under his gaze, like a certain Hyuga used to do for the very same blonde. Have you been crying? She had been crying in his absence, crying for what she wished they could share, but of course she couldn't tell him that. She hadn't gone soft. She was a rough rock. A tough one, too. I wasn't crying. Why couldn't you tell me calmly? He frowned deeply, sensing the lie. Why were you crying? He cared for her deeply and wouldn't wish for even a gust of wind to blow on her too strongly. I said that I wasn't. She kept fighting it, although she didn't want to. Fine. He looked away. I'll accept your lie and pretend to believe it. You weren't crying. Can you tell me why you've been so happy while I wasn't here? Great. He wasn't leaking any sarcasm or condescension in his voice, but he said it in such a manner that indicated that he was confused as to why she was lying, and it was pathetic sounding. Both him and her. He was actually giving a damn and telling her that although he was aware of the obvious lie, he wanted her to let him in regardless. Who cared? I'm fine, she said at last, although she couldn't look him in the eyes. Thanks for asking. If I'm bothering you and you want to be alone, I can. Naruto started backpedaling while pointing a thumb over his shoulder. Leave you alone. No. She raised both of her hands to assist her vehement plea. Please stay. As soon as the words left her mouth, she felt like kicking herself. Was this what she was reduced to now? Practically begging a guy to stay with her. God, she needed to get out more. We can stay inside. Go out, anything you'd like. What'd you say? We'll do anything you want. Naruto was eager to please, but he had his own reasons why. Perhaps he could even convince her to stay longer by making her think that staying in Konoha was marginally better. Staying with him. I don't know what I want, she mumbled. I know who, though. That sounds a bit perverted, but who gives a damn? I know what we can do. Equals X equals X equals. 1 eat ice cream. Matsuri deadpanned the question. Really? Some things never leave you. He took up a plastic cup that was nearly qualified to be a bowl. Which flavor? She only stared at him, making him raise an eyebrow. What? Lactose intolerant. Don't like ice cream. Afraid it'll go to your hips. No, and, maybe. She She admitted the last. But ice cream. Are you saying that you don't want any? He reached into the deep freeze refrigerator and scooped up a helping of orange pineapple. Last call, or you're going to have to sit somewhere and watch me eat this. You won't like it. I won't like it either. Doesn't she want to do this? We're usually so much alike. She finally relented after some childlike badgering. Fine. Give me something with chocolate in it. Chocolate or nothing. You got it. Seals were everywhere in the kitchen, stocked with all kinds of food, closets filled with all kinds of clothes, everything that was stocked with everything plus accessories. It was as if the household was made to survive several apocalypses, and nuclear winters. Wordlessly, he scooped up chocolate into her container first, then cookies and cream after. Setting it on the table, he pulled extras and additions with extravagance, making a show as he topped her ice cream with chocolate syrup, nuts and a candy black cherry. Wow! She breathed out. That has to be the best looking thing I've ever seen. The show? He asked eagerly. The what? Hell no, I'm talking about the ice cream itself. Give it here, quick. Her eyes were of an impossible size, and he couldn't help but wonder how she must have grown. Being raised on little made her appreciate every little thing, and he was no different. He laughed merrily. Here you go. He handed to her, and she snatched it from him greedily. Weren't you concerned for your hips not 2 minutes ago? What hips? She asked back. Those lovely ones right there. He trailed off in mortification as her eyes widened where she saw where he was looking at. Without preamble, he shoveled an ample amount of his ice cream in his mouth and pretended to choke and moan about cramps in his teeth. What was that? She heard him. He heard himself. For Cammie's sakes, she wanted to hear that again, he'd better. *GH I ate too much at once. I was even getting my teeth frozen. He defended. Smooth save, suave speaker, she replied in sing-song, although she felt disappointed. They were alone, so, why not just continue the line? Was he embarrassed? I'm heading to the living room. Coming. As she walked out of the room ahead of him, she could feel his eyes on her and added a little swaying swagger as she walked in a manner she thought was alluring. She could hear him making choking sounds again, and smiled to herself. Naruto was back. Still wondering if the situation was safe, he followed her and soon, they were sitting next to each other on the sofa. As they ate in silence, Naruto searched himself for a good conversation topic. He failed miserably, and knew that if he tried to start one, it would turn out awkward and weird, he'd make a fool of himself, maybe bumble and burst into spontaneous combustion or... You know that I've been talking to Hinata. For a girl that just up and claimed that she loved you in front of every one of your fellow rookie 9, or however that goes, I haven't seen you try to get with her, if you know what I mean. I haven't. I let her down gently. Naruto started to sweat a bit, although he was eating a frozen dessert in a cool room. It was a sense of knowing where this topic was going, and he'd have to answer all if he wanted the best outcome. But to answer truthfully when they came. Why'd you do that? She looked up and he immediately had to look away from her piercing gaze. For eyes he loved looking into. Right now, he was afraid to stand stalwart against it. She's nice. Nice doesn't just cut it. I told her that I'm just not the right guy for her. You could learn to love her. She's nice, pretty, has a rich family, practically has a princess status here, and you're almost like her counterpart, but with better, everything else. Is that a backward compliment, or are you giving me your blessing to date her? He raised an eyebrow before going back to his ice cream. I'm asking why you two didn't, Matsuri defended. You two would have been good for each other. Now she'll have to settle for someone less. The same thing goes for you too. I don't think lesser of people, he replied demurely. Even my Jinchuriki status, I'm basically cursed, so I can't think lesser of people. Her eyes softened. You think lowly of yourself. Guess that's another thing we have in common. You're not the one who's burdened. I bet that you could get with any guy you wanted. In his mind, He felt like he was giving her away to some nameless guy in the future, but hoped that she'd refuse. But would that be fair? To tell her to stay single, just because he couldn't be with her? That wasn't fair, was it? Besides, who was he to tell her that? Really? Me? She asked, amazed. In this, she half forgot her frozen treat and it started to melt. I can't even measure up to some of the civilians and kunoichis that chase after you the minute you leave the compound. Deciding to file away for later the kind of competition she was using as a measuring stick, he answered what had been his first point. Let's start with that. You weren't selling yourself short, you're just being humble. You're fit. We've gone out running how many times and without using any kinds of enhancements, outpaced and outmatched anyone who'd come after us. You're tenacious. You ran out of chakra and risked death just to sense for me and you crawled on hands on knees right to my door. You're contrite. It was basically your way of punishing yourself like a penance for a fault I think was worth punishment. Naruto, she tried to interrupt. No, let me finish, he continued. I know you think that you did this just to get a place to sleep, but you meant that apology. I'm a bit of an empath whether I have save mode on or not, so I could sense the sincerity. You think you can't measure up to some of those so-called gorgeous people? You're pretty. Her face lit up. No, scratch that, he stated. Predictably, her face fell. You're beautiful. Her face contorted into a mixture of shock, happiness, and impartial reddening and pleasant surprise. She didn't have to urge him to continue, because that he did. Certainly so. You're all natural, and that's the way I love it. They have to cake on makeup and it's like putting a nose ring on the snout of a hog. What good is the makeup if they're unsightly on the outside, or even worse, disgusting on the inside? But not you. Every time I've seen you try to do some shopping, you just walk right past beauty salons like it's a waste of money, she finished. I mean, a pampering at a spa is nice, but I can't really see why people would try to redo everything on their face at a salon just short of corrective surgery. And then if rain falls, meh, she put her cup of dessert down on a nearby table and got over closer to him, where she promptly hugged him tightly. Thanks, Naruto. Anything for you, Matsuri-chan, he whispered. Hearing that for the first time, her heart swelled with happiness, knowing that it would be safe to use them. Suffix with me. He was telling her that it was fine, by setting the example. But one thing begged for an answer. You were following me, Matsuri asked in a bewildered tone. He chuckled nervously. I was, making sure that none of those hags tried to do anything to you. He hoped that she'd buy it. She did. Naruto-kun, I'm not a porcelain doll. She was about to bump his shoulder, but instead rested her hand on his. I'm only a rock. The significance of this gesture was not lost on him. They weren't just friends anymore. At the very least, they were close friends, at the very, very least. It would be easy to convert that into what he hoped, but he still had misgivings about what the future held. The pros and cons to continue what he hoped they could share, versus the ones that he didn't. His wants and needs were completely different, and he wanted her. So, what was that about the kind of people you couldn't measure up to? He treaded carefully, and hoped that if worse came worst, he could pull it off as a joke. Your competition for me, afraid you couldn't compare. You wish, she yelled boisterously. I wish, she whispered almost inaudibly, but he still heard. He didn't say anything though, besides practically doing cartwheels in his mind. Why'd you think that? Now, he jested, no need to get so defensive, here. No one else is here to judge. Naruto-kun, don't make me have to kick you where it hurts. Fine, he laid off. Are you going to finish drinking that? He pointed at her cup of remaining ice cream. It had melted, but that didn't deter her. It's not warm, so, she started half drinking, half eating it, while he rooted, chugged, over and over. She was soon done, and he smiled. Tomboyish too. Well, I knew that already. We should go do something. Just the two of us. You what? Oh Kami, is he asking me on a date? Please yes, please yes, please yes, it isn't corny, is it? No, no, it's. A sudden 3 knocks came at the front door and their conversation came to a dramatic pause. The first thing that ran through their heads was who could it be knocking at their door at 9 in the night. The second, and most important, was that how someone actually made it onto the property and had the audacity to just knock on the door. The knock sounded rather close to the ground too, as if the person was extremely short. Naruto decided to try and sense for the person's identity using Sage Mode. It took all of 10 seconds to get into the mode, versus what used to be instantaneous. He had a few ideas as to what, or who, was causing the problem, but instead he focused on the task at hand. Naruto-chan, a rather old-sounding voice shouted. Are you there? It's Fukasaku. Oh, Naruto sheepishly scratched the back of his head in his trademark style. Haha, it's Sage Arts teacher. He's fine, Naruto told Matsuri, who had already had her Johio out and ready. The Izu Namikaze went over to the door and opened and was about to let in what appeared to be a wizened old green toad that carried a staff. Hey, Fukasaku-sama, to what do I owe the pleasure? The old toad peered inside and noticed a plainly casually dressed teen in the living room staring at him, and then back again at his student. He looked rather happy. Ever since Naruto started walking a razor's edge with the Sage Arts and the Kyuubi, such a phenomenon was rare. Very. In fact, it was truly a pity that he was bearing news. And as the old adage once said, no news is good news. Tsunade-sama wished for me to come tell you personally. She is still unable to come onto the property. Why? So she wants me to come to her. It's a summons. He looked off towards the tower and looked about ready to leave. She isn't in a proper state to tell you, Naruto-chan. What's wrong? Naruto could feel a despondent vibe leak into the air and he himself did not feel any better from it. It's about Jiraiya boy. The toad looked away while allowing only a single tear to fall. Naruto noticed, and felt immense worry all of a sudden. Jiraiya, what about him? He wants me to go to him. Naruto began hoping for many different things for his sensei all of a sudden, and he didn't even know what was wrong yet. Naruto-chan, Jiraiya boy is dead. Quote, quote. They two looked at each other for a minute-long moment, impassive. Matsuri had a good view of the two, and only watched as Naruto began to chuckle. It was one free of all emotion, and it worried her. She knew of Jiraiya from Naruto's stories, all very amusing, and knew that the two of them were close. Naruto-kun, she asked tentatively, are you alright? His chuckling suddenly erupted into full-blown laughter. You, old Fukasaku, you really got me. That, Naruto calmed down, somewhat, but the two with him could sense from the air that his aura indicated him becoming dangerous to be around. Fukasaku, that is one scary joke. Naruto-chan, the toad pleaded. I'm not joking. He's fallen in battle. No one knew how it happened, but a fiery red aura took hold of Naruto's physicality, and the Kyuubi's influence was clear, especially by way of his now red, slitted eyes, pronounced whiskers and longer nails and fang-like teeth. Don't you lie to me, Fukasaku. Naruto's voice grew stern and demonic sounding, and in another moment, the toad was slammed against a pillar of the house a few meters away in a choke grip, spider web cracks behind him. Don't you fucking lie to my face. The toad should have been able to outfight something like this, but had been taken off guard. He was paying the price, as he was now feeling a repeat stress of his earlier battle wounds and his airflow cut off. Naruto-kun, Matsuri yelled at the Jinchurikin, running towards him from behind. What are you doing? Let him go. His crazed eyes snapped to her, but he didn't relent. Stay out of this. Well, to her credit, she didn't back down either. He didn't do anything wrong. She reached him now and tried to prise off his grip on the elderly toad. It was like iron, as Naruto resumed his focus on the toad, intent on finishing what he started, no matter the consequences. Try as she might, she couldn't do it. She tried the next thing that came to mind. She grabbed a hold on Naruto's head at either side of his face and tried to turn his head to face her directly. His head turned, but he didn't take his eyes off of Fukasaki. "Naruto-kun, look at me." He emitted a low feral growl as his eyes turned to face her, but it was short-lived as it returned to the toad. This happened twice more before she got desperate. Pulling his head closer to her for the last time, she met him halfway and strongly pressed her lips against his. There was hardly anything eloquent to it, as she roughly tried what she hoped would distract him from the toad, enough to let him go. It was also a bit for her. How she longed for the both of them to have a first time, a romantic one, but nothing like this. And then his tongue entered her mouth. She had started it off as a last-ditch effort to distract him from Fukasaki, then it boiled into heat as Matsuri could feel like his mouth was on fire but it didn't hurt her. Then it evolved into a hopeless desperation being shared between the two, one who felt that to love would mean the loss of everything he had worked for, and the second who wanted love but felt like she didn't deserve it. His tongue felt rough in hers, like an animal's, while hers to him felt like a snatch of his humanity. She was holding onto it for him and trying to give it back to him, hoping for him to come back into himself. His claws became his to no longer slice her flesh. His hands became his to hold her closer. His teeth became his to no longer cut her. His eyes became his to gaze into hers. The act brought no pleasure, only alleviation from all that they were. When all was said and done, Fukasaki watched with bated breath as Naruto collapsed onto his knees involved in his grief. It was all Matsuri could do, to kneel before him and rest his head onto her shoulder where he cried uncontrollably. She became his stronghold. She became his support. She became his rock.